We are back from the 4th of July holiday. And, I made a mistake on Friday. I said we were going to be back on Monday, and then immediately was corrected after the show ended. And I was like, oh, crap. You know what the thing is? You will not be able to get guests on July 3rd or 4th because nobody's going to want to travel right before the 4th, and nobody wants to do a late night show on the 4th when there's fireworks going off and people have gotten out of work and there's burgers. So I was just like, let's just take the opportunity and celebrate America. But there's a lot of news. So they found cocaine at the White House in the West Wing, where the Oval Office is. Joe Biden's laughing about it. And I'm just, look, they're trying to make it seem like it might have been a tourist or something. You're not getting cocaine into the White House past security if you're just a tourist. So, of course, everybody's suggesting maybe Hunter Biden. Maybe. I honestly think it's probably somebody with high enough clearance where they're not being stopped by security. But we'll talk about this. We'll get into that news. We got some news from the past week. Ron DeSantis, when he did that, when the DeSantis campaign posted that ad about Trump being pro-LGBT or whatever, DeSantis is actually getting a lot of flack for this. And Peaky Blinders, that's what it's called, right? Peaky Blinders?
Yeah, that's the show.
They've come out and publicly denounced the DeSantis campaign over this ad that DeSantis' campaign didn't even make. They just reposted. But I think this one's particularly interesting. And then we got a bunch of other news, but one big story, there's a Bud Light bottling plant is shutting down. 2 plants, actually. 645 employees are being laid off because Bud Light sales have tanked so much they can't handle the volume anymore. So, wow. And we definitely got to talk about Sound of Freedom. If you guys haven't seen it, I really do recommend it. It's an amazing movie. It's about trafficking. Jim Caviezel. We went and saw it last night, so we'll talk about that. And it's rivaling Indiana Jones. It was released on a Tuesday, not for the weekend, but for Tuesday. Sound of Freedom is just short of Indiana Jones' take. So that's actually quite amazing. I'm really impressed with that and really excited. So we'll get into all that. Before we do, my friends, head over to castbrew.com and buy our coffee. Join the Cast Brew Coffee Club. Buy our coffee. I really got to say, I think it's the best coffee I've ever had. And that's easy for me to say because, we formulated it. We put the roast together and found what we thought was the best. And we're hoping that you think it's the best as well. Purchase Rise with Roberto Jr. Light Roast or Appalachian Nights Dark Roast. They come in either ground or whole bean. And you can join the Cast Brew Coffee Club. Get 3 bags every single month. We're sponsoring ourselves. With your support, buying our coffee, you'll help keep the show going and help us expand into the physical space as we build out our coffee shops for physical locations. We're working on it. It's a lot of work to be done. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but we're getting there. Don't forget to also head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member, get access to our Discord server where you can hang out with like-minded people and actually call into our members only after show. We'll have one of those for you tonight, just at 10 p.m. when the live show on YouTube wraps up. And you can actually submit questions and call in and talk to us. It'll be a lot of fun. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more is Matt Braynard.
Glad to be back. Thanks for having me, Tim.
Absolutely. Who are you? What do you do?
Oh, I'm just a mere community organizer and civil rights organizer, fighting the good fight for the January 6th prisoners, fighting to get election integrity restored in the country, and on the side, helping out campaigns here and there.
Right on. We got Phil Labonte hanging out.
Hello, everyone. I am Phil Labonte, lead singer of All That Remains, anti-communist and counter-revolutionary.
I swear that was not my cocaine at the White House, Serge.
Ian, you don't do
cocaine. Hi, Ian Crossland, and I do not do cocaine. I have done cocaine in the past, I will admit, but I do not do that stuff anymore.
I imagine you're a mushrooms guy.
Way better. I think if you do it in the right dosage. It's really, when you talk about drugs, you want to talk about dosage. Isn't Nixon that created this whole drugs thing and put them all into this basket of forever chemical?
Crocodile works great if you microdose it.
I hear that stuff's nuts.
No. None of that stuff.
Yeah, none of that.
It's really sad to see the all over West Virginia, they have these emergency treatment things for the drugs and how it's really damaged everybody. Crocodile and people, their flesh. No, we don't. Let's talk about Hunter Biden's problem.
Yeah, because other chemicals, they call them drugs and they're nowhere near as dangerous. No. So let's just move on.
When I heard this story, my mind immediately went to the disparity of justice in this country. How many people are sitting in prison right now because the exact same amount of cocaine was found somewhere near them, in their car, in their home? And when it comes to the White House, they're just laughing about it. They're making jokes.
There's a video that circulates of Joe Biden being like, if they are found within this much crack, prison. and it's like the same amount, and then it shows Hunter with like rocks.
We'll get into the news.
Yeah, let's introduce our man over here to the right.
Yeah, I'm just laughing about that. It was pretty funny. It's good news. And like I said, like Trump's White House had Coke all over the place. You know, pretty openly. It's that Diet Coke though. It's not the same thing. So, all right. Anyways, let's get to it.
Here's the first story. We got it from Timcast.com. Cocaine found in the White House prompts evacuation. If it's the old executive office building, it's likely staff, tweeted Ari Fleischer. If it's the mansion, it's likely Hunter. It's amazing. The White House was evacuated around 8:45 p.m. on July 3rd after the substance was discovered by members of the Secret Service Uniform Division during a routine patrol of the building. The item was sent for further evaluation, and an investigation into the cause and manner of how it entered the White House is pending, the Secret Service said in a subsequent statement per NPR. The agency will review surveillance footage and visitor logs as part of its investigation. The location of where the cocaine was discovered has become a point of controversy. Initial reports claimed the drugs were discovered in the ground floor library of the presidential residence. The Washington Post quoted a dispatch from DC's Department of Hazardous Materials team in which a firefighter stated, "We have a yellow bar saying cocaine hydrochloride." Yeah, I saw this story over the weekend. It was like hazmat situation. And I can't remember who we were talking to, but they're like, oh, that sounds like something's actually happening. Turns out it was cocaine. And now they're saying it was in the West Wing. So it's kind of like either way, no matter where it was. Look, the highest probability is Hunter Biden. Hands down, no question. And they've said cocaine, but I'm wondering, could it have been crack or something? You know, the Timcast article from Hannah Claire mentions his crack cocaine addiction. We have an update on the story. Biden laughs off White House cocaine scandal and refuses to answer reporters' questions, while Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre suggests drugs found in West Wing belong to a visitor. I'm sure they did. This isn't the first time someone's claimed to have done drugs in the White House. I think Willie Nelson and Snoop Dogg claimed they did. I was talking about this earlier. And I was thinking about it, and I could be wrong, but my view of this whole thing is the founding fathers probably did a ton of drugs in the White House. Then there was probably a period from like the early 1900s to the 70s where there were no drugs in the White House. And then you started getting probably a lot more drugs in the White House after that. I think.
Oh, John Kennedy, I think. I bet he partied hard. He would have like Marilyn Monroe over, didn't
that's
he?
true. And she did a ton of drugs.
You know, I don't know, because I actually had a good friend of mine who worked with me on the Trump campaign in 2016. She worked very, very hard. And because of that, she earned a White House job under President Trump. However, she tested positive for smoking weed, and that was yanked. No way, not getting in here. I don't know what the standards are for this White House, but I know historically that has not been tolerated. And
dude, if someone came to me and said Bill Clinton did not do drugs in the White House, I would bust out laughing. I'm sorry.
I imagine, I guess, back then.
I imagine someone like the president. Yeah, but what to your point, like if you're going to be in the Oval Office and stuff like that, even if you're some kind of clerk or something like that, you have to have some kind of clearance. And if you have any kind of drug history, or if you lie on the polygraph test, then you can't get a clearance. So it makes sense that there would be, issues with like your average person. If you're someone higher up, like if you're a chief of staff, or if you're the president, or if you're, someone like that, I imagine you could probably get the Secret Service to overlook or ignore or something like that. But if it's just your average, like one of the lower tier people that actually has to work for the president or in the office, I imagine they're getting tested, because they have to have the clearance.
It's got to be somebody who doesn't have to go through security.
Yeah. Or someone that has enough clout where if they go through security can't be like, yo, we're...
Yeah, because not only could Secret Service overlook it, they might also cover it up. Be like, hey, terrorism, everyone, look out. We got to mask up. This could be dangerous. Like, really? It's cocaine. Like,
nobody who has to go through security is bringing cocaine into the White House. And what level of staff member has to go through security and would be like, I've got clout and I have to go to security and they're going to find out I have this, but they can't do anything. No way.
I bet there's a lot more than we realize. Just dudes just that are like addicted and they're like, I'm not doing another day without it kind of mentality.
Like, how does surveillance not catch it? But how does surveillance not catch it? Because, the Discord leaker of all those secrets, they found him real fast. But for some reason, they can't immediately figure out who dropped it in a certain room. Like there's parts of the White House that are not monitored, where the story is this is where tourists are allowed. So there are parts of the White House where a tourist can go, and is not monitored. Does anyone really buy that?
Yeah,
really?
no way.
I bet.
No
I think
way.
they know. I'm pretty confident they know exactly whose that belongs to. Good luck figuring out.
And I'm going to say this. They have surveillance all over that building.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that they do not is insane. We know they do. They have men on the roof. When you go and visit the White House, you can see there's guys up there. Okay, they're watching you, and they're armed.
And they've got sniper rifles.
Yes, they do. So if you're going to try and tell me they don't have surveillance in that building, that is untrue. So I'm going to say this. That suggests they know who did it, are covering it up. Therefore, it was Hunter Biden. I mean to say this. Let's clarify. I'm not saying I really believe it was Hunter. I don't know. I'm just saying until they actually come out and say whose it was, I am just going to say it was Hunter because, Occam's razor.
Well,
you got a crack addict, drug addict guy with access to the White House to the degree he will not be stopped by security. They know who he is, the president's son, as probably his.
Whether it's Hunter Biden or somebody else, what we do know for a fact is there's two tiers of justice. Just like Hunter Biden got treated very gently with his prosecution for his crimes, that other people are suffering badly for, losing their families, in jail for, possession of cocaine in a place like that. Anybody else, even in your house, in your car, you park your car next to the White House and they find that in your car, you're in a world of pain. But the White House, one of the protected people, two-tier justice, we're just going to laugh it off.
Yep.
Jack Posobiec said he thought there's actually a 3-tier justice system. This is a little bit of an aside, but that there's the protected class, there's the plebes, the regular people like everyone else, and then there's the persecuted class, which is like a unique class like Julian Assange or at the moment Donald Trump.
Or J6ers.
Exactly. I guess so, yeah. Where it's like it doesn't really matter what you've done. They want it's personal kind of class of people.
There's the persecuted, the protected, and then the we don't care. The we don't care people can get scooped up and pushed around sometimes, and sometimes they get ignored. There might be someone who committed a crime, and they're like, oh, I don't know about this, whatever. Then you have the protected, the political elites and their cronies and their followers and worshipers. And then you, of course, have the persecuted, the people like the woman in Alaska whose home was raided because she looked like a woman who went in the Capitol building. That's crazy.
I actually went to the D.C. Gulag. I was allowed in to visit a prisoner. And just the fact, just going in was completely dehumanized. If you ever want to come in, I can get you in too. But I went there to meet a guy named William Cressman. This is a great example of what Jack was talking about. This guy has not been charged with any violence. He's a military veteran. He's not been charged with conspiracy or organizing anything. He's just a guy who showed up. He was arrested in January of 2021. He still doesn't have a trial date.
Wow.
And they have denied him his psychiatric medicine. They have he's tried to keep journals and they just come through and throw all his papers away. He's not been given, he has 2 daughters that he had not seen for those 2 years plus, 2 young daughters. And he was finally going to get to see them the week after I was in to visit him. And that is just, whatever the wildest thing in the world they wanted to accuse him of, that they might even charge him with, he would have already had time served. But they're keeping him in there in dire conditions, still not a trial date. Military veteran, not charged with any violence because they can. Because not of what he did, but because of what he believed. And that's a great example of what Jack Posobiec's talking about.
Is this the indefinite detention because of the clause in like what the NDAA, I think?
No, it's worse. This is unjustified constitutional violations.
Speedy trial, man. It's right there.
So, where are we at? Is someone going to file a lawsuit or something to get some movement on this?
He's been doing his best. His lawyer's been doing his best, but they just keep blowing. Like I said, not even a trial date, not even bail. He's a clean record. He's a military veteran. He fought for this country overseas. And, the only thing that I've been doing a lot of things on this field. The last thing we have decided is that the only person who's really going to be able to make an effect on this is the next president. So we've launched a project called the J6 Question. We're paying $1,000 to anybody who will ask one of our presidential candidates what they're going to do for the J6 prisoners. And I'm very happy to say that today we actually cut our first check for $1,000. We announced the project 2 weeks ago. Somebody asked Asia Hutchinson, got it on video. We've been presenting it. Wow. So the only person who can really fix this is the next president. So we're going to get them on the record now so voters can be informed going to the ballot box in terms of how these people are going to handle what I believe is the greatest civil rights violation of our day.
How many people are in prison right now from January 6th?
We've got 141. In fact, there were 42 people just arrested last month, and
Whoa.
the DOJ has plans for another 1,000 to be arrested. There are a lot of them that are still in jail without a trial date, without any opportunity for bail, and they're just hanging out there.
How many people have been let go or have been released?
Quite a few hundred. The thing is, and this is the most disgusting part of it to me, is that the Department of Justice's attitude is that you might be able to beat the charges, but you can't beat the ride, and you can't afford it. So a lot of people are just taking a plea agreement to just get out of it, even though they're not guilty. And in fact, I'm really have to admire William Cressman because he was offered a plea agreement. He had to do two things. He had to agree to the two lesser charges, and he had to condemn President Trump.
Wow.
And say that President Trump was the one that made him do it. And he said, that's just not true. And I'm not going to admit to something that isn't true. So he has put himself through this like a martyr. And I cannot wait for the day that he gets out and that he can tell his story publicly, because it's that was the ask. You have to condemn President Trump, and you have to plead to these other charges. I'm not guilty of any of it.
Dude, that's that Chinese version. I don't even want to blame the Chinese, but that weird
communism.
Yeah, what's that tactic where they come in and they make you say things that you know aren't true to break you, and then they're like re-education kind of mentality. I've never heard of that in the United States before. This is the first time. Maybe they did it to the Japanese internment prisoners during World War II.
Well, what they want to do is they're using these people as pawns in hopes that they turn on President Trump, because if they say, oh, I did it because President Trump told me, that makes it easier for them, the prosecution, to go after President Trump, say, hey, we got all these people telling him that you did this because...
Haven't people already done that, though?
Yes.
There are a handful of people who are like, oh, it was Trump's fault.
But remember, that's under severe duress, right? Because they're getting a deal because of it.
A lot of people think that Trump hasn't done enough to help those people.
What could he do?
I don't know. What do you get that vibe? What do you think he could do?
I don't know what he's done behind the scenes, but what I do know is the only person who can really do anything is the next president. And that's the only person who's got any ability to move this. And look, my take on it is that they should be given blanket pardons, especially because the vast majority of these people have not been charged with violence.
You think it's the next president? So like for 2 years, these people are just screwed? Like Biden, do you think there's any hope?
Like a little less than 2 years, like a year and a half. Right?
Is that what you told the guy when you went in? What was the guy's name again that you hung
William
out?
Cressman. And look, we have a J6 database at Look Ahead America, lookaheadamerica.org/J6. We have the most comprehensive database of everybody that's been charged, and it tells you whether they're arrested or anything like that. So if you want to help William Cressman, you can look him up there and send his attorney some money on his Give, Send, Go. But we have done the good thing is the public's now on our side, because the plurality of people agree that these people are in fact political prisoners. But the Biden administration does not care, and the FBI, who are persecuting these people in the DOJ, they do not care, because there's no accountability. There's nothing you can do to stop them other than make an informed decision about the next president.
The fear.
Look, people love it when I say the magic words, civil war. But let's think about where we're at. At the very least, it may be a bleeding Kansas type phase, before, and maybe I'm wrong. In the 1820s, there was talk of civil war over the issue of slavery, economics, and the things around this. And it wasn't until 40 some odd years later that the war actually broke out. But we're at a point where federal law enforcement has, I don't think detained is even the right word, renditioned people without charge or trial. That's it. The Constitution is Swiss cheese. The idea that the DOJ can take people and hold them now more than 2 years later, often in solitary, which is torture, without charge or trial. Come on.
It's insane.
Iran only held our hostages for 444 days. These people have been in over for 800, still waiting on a trial date.
My guess is that the administration feels like if they're all let out and pardoned, that they think Trump will actually create a revolution, and they think that those people will be the foot soldiers.
Well,
and that's like such a dumb,
I think it's just intimidating other people. I really think that the reason that the people that are still in prison and for the J6 riot and stuff is just because they want the rest of America to be like, well, they don't care. They're not going to observe your or respect your rights. They're going to hold you in violation of the Fifth Amendment, your right to a speedy trial and stuff. They're just gonna run roughshod over the Constitution. If the federal government feels it's acceptable to kill a U.S. citizen because they have a suspicion that they're, a terrorist, or because they don't like some of the things that they were saying, then I don't think that it's ridiculous to think that the government wants to use its power to intimidate other Americans,
Yeah, I fully agree with that, man. They don't want anyone to riot. They don't want anyone to even protest at the White House. I don't think they want anyone near it.
I don't know about anyone. They just don't want the right to.
Yeah,
because if it was the left, they would if it was Antifa, there's history. There is a past history, demonstrably, that they will not arrest people on the left in the same manner and with the same vigor and with the same malice that they arrest people on the right. There were people rioting all over Washington, D.C. Was it the 29th of May of 2000 or whatever, or 2020? What was when they?
Was it May 29th, I think?
I think the 29th, whatever. But the people...
I talk about this a lot. The reason why Blackstone's formulation was so important, the reason why we have the right to a speedy trial, innocent until proven guilty, the Founding Fathers believed that if people could be held criminally in prison or jail, even if they were innocent, there would be no incentive to be a good citizen if at any point you could be arrested. This is why it's better that 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent person suffer. Because if people believe, if I'm truly a good person, the system will protect me, now we can see the inversion of that.
Yeah. That's why
they don't care, but here's the important point. If people start to believe, and unfortunately, it is true, that no matter what you do, the Biden administration, the cult, these evil, depraved people are going to use the weight of force against you. There is no incentive to negotiate. The point is, This is the behavior that, like any other domino collapse, leads to governmental collapse. You can see it in all these other countries. What happens in Syria? You get protesters. The Assad regime, whatever you want to call it, says we are going to stop these people, creating a backlash. Occupy Wall Street, best example. About 1,000, 2,000 people are marching down the street. Anthony Bologna, the cop, walks up to 3 random women who were not a part of the march and pepper sprays them because they were yelling. The video goes viral. The fastest viral video in history at that point, 1.2 million views in less than a day, in like 12 hours. Igniting Occupy Wall Street across the country. When law enforcement uses heavy-handed tactics, it is a spark on kindling. And what scares me about what we're seeing with the Biden administration and the J6ers is that it's sending a message to people not to be scared of them, but that they are illegitimate. They will not follow the rule of law. They will not give you a fair trial. Therefore, there is no system by which you were involved. It is no different than a group of muggers beating you mercilessly in the street. There's no rhyme or reason other than they want to assert power over you. This is one more domino falling over towards a potential civil war in this country.
Yeah, this is why I use the word dumb when I talk about these tactics of like they're afraid these people will become Trump's foot soldiers if they're all let out and pardoned. The problem is you're creating the problem that you're afraid of by incarcerating them without a trial or without even a charge, because it's radicalizing them in prison. And when they come out, their families will remember and their friends will remember. And you're radicalizing an entire population and an entire 50 years worth of people by violating their constitutional rights. You need to trust the populace. Maybe being in the government is not a realm of trust. You're afraid and you're always on the defensive, perhaps. That's part of why I don't run in that.
History shows that there's a silver lining to this, because how many of the great leaders who've done wonderful things for their country at some point in their early life were political prisoners, like Mandela or Martin Luther King, or in India, Veer Savarkar. That's a pattern throughout history of great positive revolutionary leaders at some point crossed a civil disobedience line or crossed the administration and ended up in prison. And that you can see that in countries all over the world. I don't think we're quite at civil war yet, and because here's the problem as I see it, as a community organizer, somebody that does voter registration and voter turnout. In the Georgia Senate runoff, in the urban counties, the progressive urban counties, turnout was in the mid-80s. In the rural counties, where I think at least as many voters are, turnout was in the mid-50s. And there you have the outcome of the election. If turnout in those rural counties was anywhere close to the urban areas, those people would have a louder voice. But unfortunately, they do not turn out. They're not part of the ballot harvesting machine. They're not part of the voting culture. And that's where I'm putting my effort to try to change. I wouldn't do too well in a civil war. I've got terrible vision. But in terms of community organizing and in elections, I think it's there if we just have to seize it. And, you know, our constituency is disaffected, patriotic Americans of rural and blue-collar backgrounds. And the best example of somebody like this from history is Dorothy from Wizard of Oz. From a poor background, probably her family didn't own that farm. They were at the whims of much more powerful forces in the economy and in the government. And she was just blown off with a tornado to some foreign land where she had absolutely no control and no power. But what she realized by the end is that she had the power all along in her ruby slippers, and she just needed to tap them together and say, home sweet home. If we can just get our people in the same way to recognize if they cast those ballots, an informed ballot, and get engaged with the process, they can solve their problems.
How do you feel about voting machines? Like, I'm very concerned about proprietary voting machines where we can't see the code, so we don't know if they're flipping vote tallies in the background. How do you foresee a solution to at least create transparency so that we know for sure that it's giving us accurate vote tallies?
So I have documented cases where the voting machines made a mistake. And there was a county where this happened. It was caught and it was fixed. But what I think is the solution long-term is to insist on open source voting equipment. You know, hand count, that's technically open source. And even if you don't believe, because, you know, all of these Democrats and leftists were saying before 2020 that, I see these machines changing votes right in front of my eyes. Kamala Harris said that herself. And there's a documentary on HBO, and now they're all denying it. But even if you don't believe that, there's a lot of good reasons to switch to open source voting equipment, which is that it's a hell of a lot cheaper. It's like half the cost. And when you get proprietary equipment, you're locked into that company maintaining it, fixing it, updating it forever. And that gets very expensive. It's a monopoly. Whereas if it's open source, you can have an in-state tech company. You can create in-state jobs to maintain it and update it. And I'll tell you, it's really more of a Republican issue now, but there was a Democrat in Congress who is a scientist. And he actually proposed a law mandating that all voting equipment be open source. So even in places like California, we're making progress on that front. And honestly, I have not seen any evidence of machines intentionally changing the outcome of a vote, and I've seen a lot of evidence to the contrary. But it's really about restoring trust of the public. They need to believe it. They need to have a Matt Braynard walk in and see, oh yes, these machines are correct. The code is right. It's doing what it says it can do, to restore their trust in the voting system. And I think that's why so many on the left oppose it, is because they don't want the trust restored, because they want people discouraged from voting.
Let's jump into this next story. I do want to come back to the voting stuff, but I want to work through some of this campaign news. We have the story from NBC News. Peaky Blinders and Cillian Murphy denounce homophobic video shared by DeSantis campaign. The video uses footage from various films, shows, and media outlets to depict the Florida governor taking extreme anti-LGBTQ positions. And we have this tweet. It says, on behalf of the partners of Peaky Blinders, Stephen Knight, Cillian Murphy, Karen Mandabach Productions, Tiger Aspect Productions, and Banijay Rights, we confirm the footage of Tommy Shelby's character used within the video posted by Ron DeSantis' campaign was obtained without permission or official license. We do not support nor endorse the video's narrative and strongly disapprove of the use of the content in this manner. And then we also have this from The Hill. Republican LGBTQ group blasts DeSantis over homophobic campaign video. I don't know if they actually posted, but you guys might remember this. We talked about it last week. I thought it was cringe. I don't know. Did you see this video, Matt?
I saw it.
Where it's like Trump with the pride flag, and he's saying, you know, like, we're going to protect our LGBTQ supporter or LGBT supporters. And then it starts showing all these news clippings of Ron DeSantis, you know, rejecting a lot of the more modern woke stuff. My take on it was, it's absurd to conflate Donald Trump saying the typical or the more traditional live and let live position with the modern woke grooming position. Like, Trump is not supporting grooming. And the stuff that DeSantis is going after now that we support is stopping the exploitation of children. To conflate those two things to make it seem like Trump supported grooming today is completely wrong. But it's resulted in a major backlash where now I'm seeing on Twitter, this has been happening for the past week or so, we've been out. And now even Peaky Blinders coming out and attacking him over it. I'm not surprised the media and Hollywood or whatever would come after him, but even conservatives are criticizing him for this.
You know, I sort of put on my political consultant hat with this one, and this is just one other case of DeSantis' staff screwing up his chances.
Oh, yeah.
And this, it wasn't Ron DeSantis that went to the account and retweeted it. Now, look, outside groups create edgy, weird videos to support their candidate all the time. And that's what happened here. Some edgy outside group created this. But then somebody who has access to the campaign account saw that. And they thought, oh, let's retweet this one, because then it made something that was an outside group that had distance from the campaign. Maybe it got a few voters their way, or maybe people asked questions, oh, how committed is Trump to the anti-groomer agenda? And then they totally stepped in it. And basically by retweeting, they took ownership of the video. And look, I run in the same circles of people that work for DeSantis and all the other campaigns, and inside, the complaints about his staff screwing up his campaign have been persistent and growing louder, going back months and months. And here's the problem is that when you're a governor of a state and you win a seat by a large margin because you're a great governor, she is, and your opponent is terrible, everybody in the staff that thinks they're the ones that earned you that 19-point victory. And in terms of expanding from a governor's race to a national race, which is from T-ball to Major League Baseball, you have to expand that circle of trust. And what he's done is he's taken a team that didn't really do a lot to get him through a governor's race, and now we're running a presidential campaign. And that he has to learn to expand his circle of trust to get people who are not going to allow bonehead mistakes like that to happen. And because, look, there's a lot of stuff going on that has been tremendously detrimental to his campaign. And it just comes down to staff. Yeah. And it's his staff that screwed up.
His campaign press team have been rolling around in it like crazy.
Picking fights with a women's group in New Hampshire because they double schedule an event in New Hampshire with the most powerful Republican women's group in the state. And rather than saying, oh, we're sorry, we'll move it to a different date or a different time or something, like, they just said, oh, we'll pick a fight with these guys.
What kind of fight? What'd they do?
A public fight.
Like just verbal on Twitter or something?
Yeah, like that kind of fight, which it's just there's stuff happening behind the scenes I can't really share, but I'm aware. But I'll give you one really good example, okay? So there's this congressman from Florida who, Greg Stube, who was not sure who he was going to endorse. He hadn't endorsed Trump yet, like most of his colleagues from Florida, right? And he's up in the air, right? And he got a phone call. A member of DeSantis' staff called him to say, hey, can you hold off endorsing President Trump? Because we'd like to get your endorsement. Both of you know the problem with that, right? A staff member calling a member of Congress to back, not the governor, a staff member. And this is a guy, this is interesting because this guy, he had an accident. He fell off a ladder in December or something. He badly injured himself. The first person to call him in the emergency room,
Trump.
Yes. And I've got so many friends who are like mid-tier, low-tier influencers. They say something cool about President Trump. Guess what they get? A FedEx with the tweet with his signature on it. Say, keep up the great work.
Yeah.
Like, all candidates have their flaws. But it's just really troubling to see these repeated mistakes. And Trump's team, they're all on top of some things. You know, it's just, they're great at these
Trump
things.
is the guy. I went to his rallies in 2015 and 16. When the rally was over, he'd walk up to the front of the stage, the barricades, and he would just hang out and shake hands and just talk to whoever was there. He knows people.
Yeah,
he
got
gets
that
it.
rock star
calling that guy after getting hurt is like a person. It's like an authentic thing to do. Yeah. DeSantis has been plastic the whole time. He's surrounded. His press people are miserably bad. And I want to show you this real quick. So put a pin in that thought, Phil. Yeah. Predict It now has Ron at 24 cents. Oh. He was actually rivaling Trump, and at some point, if he was above Trump, now he's gone. It's just gone.
Matt, do you think that, because as far as I can tell, the strategy that DeSantis has is to attack Trump from the right. Do you think that that's a winning strategy?
I'm not sure that is his strategy. I think it's been different things at different times, which is part of the problem. Look, it was going to be an uphill battle to begin with, and I think that was a little bit unexpected was that the indictments would actually, and first I could see this, I'm sure everyone at this table could see this, but the indictments were actually very helpful to consolidating the base to Trump, and they did something else, is they sucked all the oxygen out of the air for all the other candidates. Right. Yeah. Plus, with the fact that you've got all these other candidates coming in, if it was a mano, it might be a different story. Because I think what DeSantis' value proposition is that I'm just as conservative, if not more conservative, but I can actually deliver on what I say because they'll point out to things that Trump couldn't quite get done.
Do you feel like because I feel like Trump's strength wasn't in that he was particularly conservative. His strength was that he would take the fight to the left. So Trump didn't have to be like, he was friendly to LGBT issues and stuff like that. And he didn't really come from the conservative, especially the religious conservative. I mean, everybody remembers the whole, the Bible's my favorite book of the Bible, that exchange. So I don't feel like he was ever particularly far to the right. Did you feel like he was?
I think that there are issues where he was to the right of the party. On immigration, he was by far the most right-wing candidate in 2016 because right before he went down that escalator, he had read Ann Coulter's book on immigration, and that fired him up, and that really put him on the map. And but I think what he has over the other candidates is that he's a known quantity. A lot of people think he was that the election in 2020 was rigged, or I can say it now. I guess a lot of people think it was stolen or rigged, and
you could always say that,
but
you just couldn't play Trump saying it.
Oh yeah. But he is authentic, and he's got a level of authenticity that is like when you read his tweets when he was on Twitter, and now his tweets are still on Twitter because they'll just take truth and repost it on Twitter. You read that, and he wrote it, and nobody got in his way. It wasn't focus group or anything like that. Whereas some of these other candidates, I think they just struggle a little bit with the authenticity.
It's kind of crazy watching DeSantis is crashing and burning. And it really is his press team because he has done great work. This video, I pulled it up. Here's the video from DeSantis War Room. To wrap up Pride Month, let's hear from the politician who did more than any other Republican to celebrate it. And they insult Trump for what actually was good. I know a lot of people are not happy with the pride flag and the current woke stuff, but we've had this conversation for years. 9 million Obama voters switched to the Republican Party. And one of the big issues was Donald Trump was very much like, these are our Americans. We're going to support them. This battle is over. There is a big difference between being like, hey, we have no issue with you if you're gay, and there are people grooming children and putting these weird books in schools. DeSantis is fighting against those weird books. He's fighting against the grooming stuff. Really, really great work. Donald Trump was not in support of those things back then. They're completely different issues. They're conflating them. DeSantis goes from, on paper, you have this amazing track record in Florida to a press team that is making him look ridiculous. I mean, this video, I said it was cringe. People were like, I really like it. Here, let me play a little bit of it for you guys.
I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens.
If Caitlyn Jenner were to walk into Trump Tower and want to use the bathroom, you would be fine with her using any bathroom she chooses.
That is correct.
In the future, can transgender women compete in Miss Universe?
Yes.
Make America great again.
Psych!
Okay, it's basically showing American Psycho and Peaky Blinders and showing ad headlines like Ron DeSantis signs draconian anti-trans bathroom bill into law. And this is really just not doing him any favors. Like you were mentioning, attacking him from the right. What is the purpose of this video? Is it like, so I'm 37. This video doesn't do it for me.
I'll tell you, because in 1996, there were a lot of people outside of the Trump campaign that were creating really cool videos. I do this all the time. My wife's yelling at the TV right now.
1996.
It's 2000.
I was like, what?
Yeah, my golden times.
Good years.
Yeah, in 2016, they were creating these really cool third-party videos that were like the meme wars, right?
Yep.
Like the Caterpillar videos, and they were really kind of cool, and they had a style. They're trying to imitate that and capture that. Whoever created this video, I mean, clearly they've got some editing talent, and they're trying. It's got this motif of like a sort of a 4chan poll motif and vibe to it, and you almost think if you slow it down enough, you might see one of those sort of white nationalist stars, those things rotating. I can't remember what it's called, the golden sun thing rotating in the back. It's
the black sun.
It's black sun. It's like all of that, and I feel like whoever created it was like, we're trying to get to these guys, and maybe they're not the most savvy, right? But somebody hit the retweet button on that campaign account, and that is they don't belong to that job anymore. We just find out one person who needs to be fired from the campaign.
Were they fired?
From this, we probably wouldn't even know. And maybe they will be, maybe they won't.
So they obviously DeSantis also had the deep fake thing when he posted the fake photos of Trump and Fauci, and it's still up. It's still up. It's remarkable that DeSantis, I'm sorry, look, man, I love his track record in Florida, but the man is incompetent. If he cannot fire his people after all of these blunders, the dude is not fit to be president.
Yeah, and it's like, it's fine to like, if you wanted to actually, if the campaign wanted to get a video like this out there to undermine Trump among, say, a certain portion of the right, you have like an outside group just sort of put it up like it was originally, like some weird thing that they circulated through the discords and the telegrams where those people live and don't touch grass. But there's a reason, oftentimes you want to have an indirect attack. So you have somebody far away, throw it at them, and then your hands are clean. So
right.
This is on an operational level a failure.
Like, why didn't you psyop? Which is crazy because you don't want candidates to be psyoping each other. But I mean, he didn't psyop. He put it on the DeSantis account.
It was made by somebody else, but it's then they took the URL to the video and tweeted it.
Sorry to interrupt. You were saying.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe the campaign did create it and they wanted to get it out too. But you do these things. Like I said, I've been in this field since the mid '90s. That's why I keep saying '96. This is old school political operation. You have somebody else attack. You have some other source go after them, a distant proxy. So you keep your hands clean, and they just dove face first into the mud with this one.
Look, a lot of people keep defending Ron. They say things like, this is his campaign, it's not him, blah, blah, blah. At this point, the man has not taken the tweets down or fired these people. Okay, that right there. We talk about the problems of bureaucracy. You know what I love about the DeSantis people on Twitter is they lie about what I've said. And if they're going to play that game where DeSantis posts deepfakes, then they lie about what I'm saying, they're just trying to trick you into supporting this guy for whatever reason. I don't know. One person was like, Tim Pool has said that Trump will magically be different this time around. I was like, I never said that. I said there's like a 55% chance Trump actually fires a bunch of these people, and that's the best we can hope for. If the probability is higher that Trump will fire the bureaucrats over DeSantis, you vote for Trump. DeSantis won't even fire his own bad staff members, and we're supposed to believe he's going to end the Department of Education or the IRS or something? Get out of here with that. Not going to happen.
In his defense, I would caution you with one thing, and that is that it's a long way to Iowa, to New Hampshire, to South Carolina, and a lot of these candidates can make their course corrections. You never know what's going to happen next.
So I'm begging him.
The thing is,
I'm begging him, fire these people. I am.
You're helping him.
I like his track record in Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, we had on, I'm not going to say the names of these people because they're duplicitous liars, but we had a guest on the Culture War show who tried to playing this game of like name a policy from DeSantis. And no matter what I said, she just kept asking the same question as if I didn't say anything. Because of course they were clip farming and they intended to lie the whole time. But DeSantis's policies based in Florida, how he handled COVID was good. When it comes to the books that they're being removed from these schools, good. When it comes to saying you can't have kids at these events, good. These are good things. Clearly, in terms of culture war issues we care about, he is doing a good job. When it comes to attracting business and new residents, when it comes to taxes, he's doing a great job. Don't get me wrong. The Republican legislature in Florida is probably doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but we like these things because they matter to us. Then, when it comes to his terrible team, he can't handle it. I am begging the DeSantis campaign to fire these people so that I can come out tomorrow and say, I'm on Team DeSantis.
Before
not going to happen unless he does.
And the thing is too, I've been all over the country. I've met with a lot of people who we need to win over, and a lot of them, they would be more happy to vote for DeSantis than for Trump at this point in time. They would be they're for some reason they just don't get along with Trump. And I think that, look, I actually met the governor before he started running for president. I had a small chat with him, just one-on-one, and he was great. And I think that he wrote a book recently. It was published, right? And The Courage to Be Free, I think. And I read it. I went from beginning to end, and it was a nice book, good biography, but I don't think enough of him was in it. Like, he talked about his whole baseball career, right? He played baseball in high school and college, very proud. But I feel like he needed to be more involved. There's something wrong with the book because it never told me what position he played. So imagine talking about how proud you are to play baseball, but the book, maybe I missed it. However, before he ever ran for Congress, after he got out of the Navy, he actually wrote a book that I am sure he had to have written himself because he didn't have a bunch of people around him helping. And it was Dreams of Our Founding Fathers. There were only 100 or so copies published. I got one of them, made a copy of it myself, and I started reading because I want to know these guys. The difference between those two books, the one that came out recently that was probably had many editors and a lot of help, and the one he had to have written himself, that he self-published 120 copies. He would go to GOP events and sell it at a card table. That book is brilliant. that book is, it could be a textbook in a college. It is that level of understanding of our founding fathers, the principles, of how articulated it is. And I'd love to see more of the Ron DeSantis that wrote that book than wrote the new one.
But if he is so weak that he has handed off these issues to lesser skilled individuals, then he has shown he does not have what it takes to be president.
He can have great policy all he wants, but just like Tim said, if you can't get elected, if you can't win, then it doesn't
execution
matter.
is everything. It's not just about getting elected. It's about, if he's showing us that he has bad people working in his campaign and he does nothing about it, what do you think is going to happen when he's in government? He
should be he is in a position where if he were doing a better job, campaigning, he should have, a significantly smaller gap between him and Trump. Trump's got a lot of downside, regardless of whether you support him or not. There's a lot of things people can criticize Trump for.
Trump hired some bad people.
Yeah.
He definitely did. But Trump has no problem smack talking the people that he eventually got rid of. DeSantis is just doing nothing and saying nothing.
Trump will smack talk to people that still work for him.
That's right.
You know what? Yeah. What would be the real sign to everybody that he's going to make a course correction? If he calls you and says, "I want to come on your show," because when you're in the position he is right now, you need to be here. You need to be talking to this audience. You need to be engaging, and
that's up to the people who watch this show, right? I'm just some dude who complains about things on the internet. It's like, we've had people say like, "Tim, you should get Trump on. You should get this person on," and I'm like, dude, none of these people owe me anything. If they want to come on the show, I'd love to have them. If Ron wanted to come on the show, we'd love to have him. We wanted to have him before, and I think a conversation like this, but it would greatly benefit him. But here's the point. I think what we're seeing is that he is incapable of a long-form, free-flowing conversation in this way. He is too surrounded by bad people who are not allowing him to be an authentic personality like Trump is.
I disagree. I think he's capable of it if he just undoes the tie, undoes the black collar, comes in and just sits down and deals, because I know he has it in him. He's just got to come in and do it.
I don't disagree. What I'm saying is the people who surround him are not allowing him to do these things.
Yeah, we should shoot some hoops. Come on down, Ron. Let's go play basketball in the skate park for a little while and a couple hours before the show, get loose, and then
I don't know if the man has time for that.
That could be
got all the time in the world.
Turns the campaign around, and then he reaches out. He has this type of conversation, which I know he's capable of, and then his poll numbers go. But
yeah. Then we start talking about the environment and fixing Earth and stuff.
Yeah. Whether it is this show or any other show, if Ron DeSantis came out and sat down and had a real conversation where they addressed the deep fakes, where they talked about this ad, his polling would skyrocket, double digits overnight. His predicted would jump way up, but he's avoiding it, hoping to make it all go away like it's 1993 and we're using old school PR tactics of, if you say nothing, it goes away. Yeah, take a look at Bud Light, dude. People aren't forgetting these things. They're taking them seriously.
And President Trump has demonstrated that you can put people in positions of great power and then fire them and shit talk them endlessly. Right?
Let's jump to this next story about Bud Light, because this is big. From the Post Millennial, bottling plants shut down after Bud Light sales tank amid Dylan Mulvaney partnership. So the news is 645 jobs lost, employees out of work after the R-Dog group shut down 2 plants. According to WRAL, it was because there was a decrease in demand, falling Bud Light sales, and thus they had no reason to make bottles anymore because Bud Light doesn't need them. Ladies and gentlemen, this is winning the culture war, and this is substantive, but there was always going to be collateral damage. I feel bad for the people who lost their jobs because of this, but it's the fault of Bud Light.
Well, there's also it's really tragic, but there's sort of the other side of it. It's not like America's drinking less beer, so maybe there are 450 or 500 more jobs created, another plant making the bottles, and but I know the company's still wildly profitable. But this is sort of the same trick that Amazon does. It's not a Budweiser plant; it's a subcontractor. So it's the subcontractor that has to eat all the dirt and the bad decisions that the contractor made.
Yep.
And InBev is Belgian Brazilian company anyway. So I'm not, no offense, I'm not too concerned with if they go bankrupt. I mean, I'm not all gung ho on America right now, but I'd like to see these people go get a job with an American brewing company like Yuengling or something.
Hopefully, if Yuengling sales skyrocket, Molson, Coors, whatever, then there will be bottling demand. But it's interesting point you bring up. People are still buying beer. So they still need to bottle beer. So what's happening? These other bottling plants are doubling their workload, and these people are getting laid off. Not really a great situation, but I just want to say, like, this is actually a sign of permanent economic damage to a brand that decided to get woke.
The damage to the brand probably can't be overstated.
Can't be undone either.
No.
You could also get a job with Ultra Right beer. I'm not sure if Conservative Dad's Ultra Right is hiring at the moment, but I'm sure they will be soon. I just drank like 6 of those.
I imagine the place that
a lot of beer.
that lost the 500 jobs, I imagine that is probably not strategically located near another place where these people can just transfer over to another another bottle.
You know what's saddest about this is that these people lost their jobs. Some are probably not going to be able to afford their mortgages. It's going to cost them their marriages, cost them their children, cost them everything. Whereas the CEO of Anheuser-Busch, see, he's still employed. He's still having the guy at the top.
He's
still
doubling
raking it
down.
in.
They're subsidizing a lot of these companies.
That would be Carlos Brito is his name. He's a Brazilian guy.
They did can the
CEO of
the
Anheuser.
Woman that was.
Oh no, not
Yeah, but do you think
They're denying it, but it's been reported that the woman and the guy have been, like, 2 people were removed.
Well, you know, they got a fat severance package. They're not out on the street. They're not like these blue collar people in North Carolina.
Well, no.
I
Officially, here's what I think happened. Officially, they're not fired. They're on leave. But literally, according to sources in the company, they're considered completely severed from the company. The reason they're not firing them is because Anheuser-Busch fears a lawsuit. They fear that they'll get sued, some labor dispute. So by putting them on an indefinite leave and saying nothing, they can get rid of them. They're fired effectively, but officially they're not fired.
But they're also going to become folk heroes on the left. They're going to get a well-paid job with the any number of left-wing groups that are supportive of what they did. So they're going to land very well. I don't have any doubt.
Maybe, but the left is clearly losing. I mean, remarkably. I mean, this is catastrophic.
I think virtue signaling loses, and it especially loses in business, man. When all you care about is making a profit, nobody cares what you think.
Yeah, but who's bearing the... I get it. And I guess companies are now a lot more cautious about doing anything woke, right? But look at what happened here, and look who actually paid the price. These blue-collar workers who probably vote the way we would like them to vote, who are good, loyal Americans, they're the ones out of their job. The people who are responsible for the decision, they're getting golden parachutes. They're going to go work for GLAAD or one of the left-wing homosexual groups or something. They're going to do great.
They should have quit when this happened. So when the controversy started and you saw sales declining and the stock was tanking, you've had 3 months to find a different job.
You mean the bottling factory people? I don't know if it's as easy for them as we might...
Didn't say it was easy. Didn't say it was easy, but
I get it.
You can see the storm coming, and I'm sorry. I'm not happy these people are losing their jobs. However, I am not going to stand in support of people who are propping up what Bud Light was doing.
I don't think they even had any awareness of it. They're just shift workers who probably barely finished high school, if anything like that. I don't think they had. These are pure civil. Like, there are people who know better.
If
people
that's
are actually doing
true,
equal,
I have less sympathy for them.
All right.
The idea that look, what Bud Light was doing with Dylan Mulvaney, I believe, is the banality of evil. The algorithm is propping up this Borat-like character that is insulting to most people, and you, working at these factories and supporting Bud Light, are one of the individuals holding up that machine, engaging in the banality of evil. I don't blame people for not knowing, because people try to do good, and we try to inform them. But I'm not going to shed a tear if there is an evil organization doing evil things. You are helping them, and then, like, if you're the henchman for a supervillain and you get fired because the villain's been arrested, I'm not going to be like, oh, that's really sad he's out of job. I'll be like, good, less henchmen for the villain.
I just don't think you can hold somebody with like a 90 IQ who's doing everything they can within the law to raise their family and doesn't have the capability of seeing what you and I can see because we're in this world. They're just innocent civilians that got caught up in this.
I disagree. They are components of a machine that is engaging in cultural destruction, decay, and the banality of evil.
The only reason
I don't blame them as individuals for marching in lockstep with an evil machine. But if we're going to stop the cultural degradation, they have to lose their jobs.
Well, but the people who made the decisions are not punished at all, and they're just going to go on to the next company and do it again.
The people at the bottom are holding this machine up. I do not believe the goal is to intentionally hurt the regular workers.
But even if you wanted to punish them, there's no amount of punishment that's going to make them understand what they need to understand to fix this.
Then we're in agreement. The only thing you can do is dismantle the machine And that means the people at the bottom are going to lose their jobs first. There's nothing else you can do. You're never going to get, even if they fire the CEO, you're talking about cutting off the head of a hydra, 2 more grow back in its place. These individual workers at the bottling plants that are producing Bud Light and selling it are generating the profits for an evil machine.
Well, you could seize the company with the government and then strip the corporation.
They're so easily replaced. I mean, they're just so easily replaced. If they decide, we're all going to quit, let's just move the plant to Mexico or something like that. It's the next thing. It's the people.
But that's not what happened. The demand dropped so much the plants don't exist anymore, which is a good outcome.
The demand shifted to another brand somewhere else, which may or may not be in the United States. We're probably not going to agree on this. I think the enemy is the snakes at the top, and it's like you can't hold these people. It's not even if you want to hold them accountable. You just can't because they're not capable of being held accountable. And
look, you are correct. The problem is the leadership of Anheuser-Busch.
Michael Ducaris,
but they have a standing army in front of them blocking you from stopping the evil practices.
Well, I think we succeeded in a way because, look, these guys are going to not make as much money as they would have otherwise. 2 people who are pretty high profile kind of lost their jobs and going to have a tough time of it. And we can see the effect is because all of these companies that were so eager to celebrate Pride Month, regardless of what you think of it, they kind of toned it down a little. And some other companies sort of backed off some of the woke stuff.
Target,
yeah, they backed. So to me, the profits for the people at the top getting cut is really all they care about. So if you can hit that, that's kind of how you adjust the culture.
But that is the collateral damage that will trickle down and hit the bottom workers.
Well, there's a reason it's called collateral damage.
Right. So my point is, I want these people to find jobs. I don't blame them for the actions of the organization, but it is a good thing that these jobs were lost. Bud Light shrinking is good. That means people lose their jobs.
I don't know if it's corporatism or capitalism that protects the CEO and the owners of the company when they can just liquidate their work staff and they don't have to pay any price for destroying their company's profits. You would say that's why communism, some people might want it because the government can go take the company away and say you misused it. You're gone.
But that's not even communism. I mean, there can be consumer protections in a capitalist system.
Where you would go strip the CEO of his job, of his duty, and take the stockholders' stock away.
Through due process, if a crime is committed.
Only if it's a crime. But since it's not a crime in the capitalist system, we've been letting CEOs get away with it for years.
Right. And the point I'm making is communism is not the answer.
No, I know. That's why we have a capitalist system, and it's better than communism. But how do you protect the workers?
All right. So you pass laws protecting workers. So you can have a capitalist system that says specifically, if you intentionally destroy the company to hurt workers, there can be some kind of intervention. It's not absolute. There's not either capitalism or communism, or communism is not the right word for it because it's political. It's not either capitalism or socialism. There's varying degrees.
State controlled, whatever.
So having some protection, I think that some protections are a good thing. But ultimately, my point here is, what did anyone think was going to happen? You stop buying Bud Light, there is less money going to Bud Light. They will fire many people. We are not mad at the people who got fired. It is a good thing Bud Light is shrinking. That's it.
Yeah. And to your question is, how do you solve this in a capitalist system? The original union organizer, who is not a communist, he's an immigrant named Samuel Gompers, had the solution. And that was for workers to form a union and use their bargaining power to actually acquire the company. So it's the workers that own the company. So they pool their funds, they buy more and more stock, board positions, to eventually a situation where the founder dies and passes on, and then they sell the company to the workers. So when you have a worker-owned company, it provides a lot of protection. Unfortunately, the union movement in this country went into the direction of politics and aiding politics and wanting not to take over management, but to fight with management for purposes of demagoguing and delivering votes to a political party. So that's kind of where we lost our way. But there is a solution. It is fully compatible with capitalism.
But also, it's a globalist company. Like AB InBev is a Belgian, is it? Belgian company? It's Brazilian, and I don't remember where it is. So how do our American union laws function with a multinational corporation?
Well, a union, they're still publicly traded. You give that union that had the people working in North Carolina or workers co-op a few board seats, you'd see a different outcome. They can earn these board seats.
So I got some news in this related area, and I seek advice from our loyal viewers. So as many of you know, we're working on a coffee shop, and there are some issues related to laws which are causing it to get delayed massively. It's an old building, and so in order to get it up to code and everything, it's a ridiculous amount of work, and it's a historical building, so then there's you got to have a lot of paperwork. So we're looking at Charlestown, West Virginia, not too far away from Harper's Ferry, and there's a building for sale. It is very big. It's right in downtown, and we went and checked it out. Very excited. And there was a restaurant there very recently. They sold and they moved. And I said, how cool would it be to set up our first or second location, depending on which gets done first, of Cash Brew Coffee here in downtown Charlestown? We went and met with the two agents, our agent and their agent, checked out the whole building. It is massive, so big, in fact, we might even be able to put a skate shop in the back with a separate entrance. Very excited for this. There's a stage that's already there. Very cool. Afterwards, we went across the street to get breakfast. And while I was getting breakfast at a little diner called Grandma's Diner, there was a newspaper called The Spirit of Jefferson. In it, I learned that Charlestown passed a Pride Month resolution. The City Council of Charlestown, West Virginia, voted to declare June Pride Month in support of all they blah, 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 and long-winded garbage. And so I said, man, what do you do? Do you invest in a town that is moving in that direction? Or do we make it a point to not invest in places like this? There's a couple arguments. The first is, if we do invest in this town, we gain influence in this town. We bring people to this town, employees, fans, and we start changing the culture for the better. What if that doesn't work and the town keeps moving in this negative direction and they end up doing things that are shocking and offensive to our customers, to our friends and fans, and we lose that fight and waste all of our money? The argument against it is maybe the city needs to see economic fallout from making decisions like this so that the people of the town get angry. So I wonder, I kind of lean towards the best thing to do is actually invest in the town and buy the business and then put up flags and signs saying like no to all of this, invite people down and start shaping the culture with our resources and force. There is the potential of going to the city and saying, so long as you have this resolution in effect, we will not spend a dime here. I feel like that one doesn't necessarily work as much. It may sound good, but it's like if your money was never available to the city in the first place, they don't care what you think. If your money becomes available and you say, but I want to see this thing no longer in force, you may actually make a difference. So I'm curious what the people, for those of you that are listening, what do you think is the best thing to do? Should we open a shop in Charlestown, West Virginia, even though just now in June, only a couple weeks ago, 5-3, the city voted in support of Pride Month, which is just so insane. There's a whole month dedicated to whatever it is they're doing. Or should we just tell them, go to the agents and tell and say, hey, let the people in the city know when you tell them you can't sell the building, it's because we don't want to invest in a town like this.
It's funny you bring this up because your point of view on this is sort of the moral argument of having the conversation with the city. What do you want to do? What consequence do you want to face? And I think that the reality is that there's no entity to have that discussion with, and there's no entity that would react to, say, losing a business or entry. And actually do these campaigns all over the country constantly for other things, like somebody wants to build a new super center for a big box store, right? And the community doesn't want it. So I get in and either help them defeat it or help them bring it in or something like that. It sounds like all you really need to do is flip 2 city council seats. You get a stealth campaign, you find 2 good candidates, you fund them, and you take it over, and you say no more Pride Month. And that's the exact same way that George Soros took over all these prosecutors. Get a stealth campaign, get a smart political consultant, recruit the candidates, and you flip it, and then you have. But the idea of
that ain't me.
I'm just telling you that's how you.
Maybe it's something you could do. I don't know. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not gonna.
But it's not even like a stealth, underhanded tactic. It's the way of the world. You find people that you believe in and you elevate them to positions of power to help lead you and your legal system.
Look, who do you think got those 5 people that voted for Pride Month on the city council? People who disagree with you.
Yes, more so I think the issue is even though the majority of people oppose all of that stuff, they do not do anything. They don't vote. They don't get up. They don't speak out. They complain in private, and it's really, really frustrating. The idea that West Virginia, the second most Trump-supporting state in the country, would allow woke prosecutors, and they do. In Martinsburg, they had a drag show in public with children and brought them on stage, which is illegal in West Virginia, unquestionably illegal, and no one's doing anything about it. And they all say, it's not my problem. I have no authority. Sorry, I can't do it. The people, it's surprising, a rural county in West Virginia voted for woke prosecutors.
It sounds like there's a void of organization in this world. and especially in this country, and particularly in West Virginia, but probably a lot of states, that we need to develop some sort of organization. Like we need to, if it's just like, sorry, little kids on stage with people waving their junk around out of their face, whatever. Like someone needs to go in there and not lay down the law, but create order.
The average person is still like learning about this stuff. Like most people don't really have a deep knowledge about things like queer theory. And then you've got then you've got like the whole like half of the country feeding a narrative that this isn't about trying to abuse kids. You got the whole media establishment trying to convince people that this isn't about trying to indoctrinate kids into a political mindset.
But you don't need to understand anything about queer theory to be like, hey, that child on stage taking his clothes off for money is a very bad thing.
Well, look, the reason this is advanced as far as it has is because the left is well-funded and well-organized. Flipping these back the other way, Martinsville or Martinsburg? Martinsburg, even Charleston, West Virginia. It wasn't like
Charlestown.
Charlestown.
Yeah.
It wasn't an 8-1 vote. It was a 5-3. That means, look, if we can just get the right people informed and turn out to vote, and it's not that hard. It just takes organization, a little bit of funding, and it's not that hard.
Well, I was like, I was talking to the agent saying like, I'm not sure it's a good idea to invest in a town that wants to go the direction of Bud Light. Clearly, we are seeing a major backlash to what Bud Light, Target, Starbucks, and these other companies have done to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. And I'm supposed to invest my money and start my business in a town that's going that same direction?
Well, here's the problem, though. Eventually, you're going to run out of places to escape from.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to pick a place to make your stand and fight. And, this is a place where I think if somebody as smart as you could come in and apply the right pressure and become part of that community, I think you could flip it. You may just be the person that could do it.
The degree of pressure I would exert is talking about it on this show, having events at our coffee shop with comedians, putting up flags in the window or something.
That may be all it takes to find the additional community organizers to go out and go hit doors and explain it. Because most of the voters who even voted for the 5 people, they probably didn't even know that they voted that way.
Yeah,
exposing them.
Second year they've done this though. Apparently,
it's within reach. It's really within reach.
Yeah, 5-3 isn't 8-0.
Yeah.
It's not San Francisco.
Yeah, exactly. Fair enough. It is disheartening to know that, all right, I'm going to invest, invest in this community, and there's people in this community that, obviously are not active or not aware of political things that affect us or that we care about. But again, 5-3 is not 8-0. So I think that most of the problem is that conservatives are still mostly unaware. People that would have a problem with this kind of stuff are still mostly unaware that there are things like this going on. And if you can just wake them, make them aware of it. It's not even about waking them up. It's just like make them aware. Because I've said before, all of the people that I talk to that are left leaning, that are, your default Democrats, when it comes to, the LGBTQIA plus stuff, the trans issues and stuff like that, even the most progressive of progressives say things like, look, they is a word that has a meaning and it's useful. We can't just give it away to people. It doesn't make sense in English. So, I mean,
you see what happened with the Young Turks?
With Anna Kasparian? It's the most enjoyable thing on Twitter right now.
Let's talk about it. What happened?
Anna Kasparian
melting down.
So Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks criticized this nonprofit for calling women's privates bonus holes. And the reaction,
others, because she had a problem with being called the birthing person and stuff like that. But
the latest one is that she criticized the organization for referring to female parts as bonus holes.
Yeah.
And what happened? Many leftist commentators said she lied, made it up, it's propaganda and not real.
Yeah.
Shockingly insane and evil. Anna is correct, and I agree with her opinion. However, I do find her to be duplicitous in that we've agreed with her and Cenk on so many things, but they always pretend to oppose us, which is the weirdest thing ever. If she came in here and sat down, we would be like, you're completely right on all of your points, 100%. Yep, that's absolutely correct. We agree. We talked about the same thing. The left comes out, calls her right wing, calls them shills, and says no one's referring to it as bonus holes. So she tweets the link to it saying, here's the organization calling women's parts bonus holes, and they still claim she's lying. Because there's two big components to what the left commentary does. Lie about what's actually happening because they're ideologues who believe there's no truth but power. So they're justified in their lies to gain power. Or they're saying whatever they think is in opposition to the right. So if anything criticizes them, they're on the other side of it. If anyone says this book is bad, then the book must be good. So when Anna comes out and says, don't call me a birthing person or having a bonus hole, they say, you're lying, that never happened, or you're right wing.
I noticed that same thing with Ilad's footage of the marching, the people that were marching saying, we're here, we're queer, we're coming for your children. And in the comments, they were like, no, that was just a moment at the march where it was out of there was somebody inciting that thing. Someone got in the way and started that chant. They weren't really saying that. And I'm like, I just watched the video 5 times. Like, I saw him say it a lot, and there were a lot of people. I don't have any evidence that someone was there inciting that, and it just seemed like lies. Like it was like a cognitive dissonant thing. Like, I cannot accept this. I must lie. I must say it didn't happen.
It's that cycle where first they say, oh, it's not happening. It's just conspiracy theory, and they say, oh, it's sort of happening. Doesn't matter. And then they say, oh, it's a good thing it's happening, and that's what NBC eventually wrote. That, oh, this is a time-honored chant among the homosexuals.
Chanting that they're coming for your children is a normal thing they always do.
They've been doing that forever.
You should definitely get Anna to come on the Culture War show.
We've invited them.
Oh, on here, on IRL. She'd be so fun.
No, like, on the Culture War show.
All of it,
talk, because especially with her making, apparently this is something that's been going on for a while. She's been having disagreements. She was on Sitch and Adams.
I want to go on their show.
Yeah,
you guys are listening.
They're looking to get in touch with you.
Cool.
But she came out and she's said that the Kyle Rittenhouse case, she understands, and she's on Kyle Rittenhouse's side, which is in opposition to Cenk's position. She has an issue with being called a birthing person or a uterus haver or whatever. So there's a lot of things that are going on the left that she's started to have an issue with, and kudos to her, because she's
every other
hell.
sane liberal person who realized what was going on and became a disaffected liberal.
Yeah. And like I said, kudos to her, because she's taken a ton of hell for it. But, the fact that she actually can acknowledge that, look, this is a lie. And one of the things she said on Adam Sitch and Adam's stream was that people were gaslighting her. And she's like, I know that you're lying to me. And I can't believe that you're still continuing to gaslight me.
Because it's not about her.
Yeah.
It's about the listeners.
Yeah.
So what a lot of these channels do, which I'll leave. There's many of them. They just fabricate everything. They don't care either, because they're ideologically or capitalistically driven. It's really fascinating. They're like, oh, I'm on the left, and they buy massive mansions in California. Complete lies. Mm-hmm. These people. It's remarkable that you look to these prominent lefties who are talking about all this. I believe in helping people and socialism, and it's like, oh, who have you supported and donated to? None. How dare you? And then you look to the quote unquote right. I love this thing about the pro-choice, pro-life argument. When the pro-choicers lie all the time. That's unfair. It's not pro-choice. It is the pro-abortion side and the pro-life side, because the pro-choicers are like in the middle and like typically now siding with conservatives on a lot of issues. I mean, like actual pro-choice, where they were like maybe within the first few weeks, but post-viability, no abortion. The reasonable Democrat position from a while ago. The pro-abortion crowd is just lying about everything. I forgot exactly where I was going, but that's basically the gist of it. You've got people who have found themselves silenced and in the middle, as the left just says whatever it is the opposite of the right, and then lies about what's actually happening to win power.
You take like post-birth abortion, how people are claiming that it's not actually happening, but they're legislating.
All the media claiming that no one ever brought it up, when Northam literally talked about even resuscitating the baby and then bring it to another room to decide what to do.
There's also a phenomenon of liars, people that think it's good to lie, and they just do it. I had a friend growing up, and granted, we were like 13 or 14 at the time, but we would play Dungeons and Dragons, and then he'd roll, and then he'd be like, I got a 5. I'd be like, dude, you just rolled a 7. He'd be like, no, I had a 5, dude. I'd be like, it was a 7. Like, that's gaslighting. But then we play with a third guy would come over, and he'd be like, no, it was a 5. And we'd both be like, you're lying to us. You just rolled a 7. He's like, no, I rolled a 5. And how do you get through to someone like that? We don't. We just had to cut ways and ostracize.
The reason they can get through or get away with it is because whoever their audience is isn't a very narrow channel. They're not like checking out a lefty on the Young Turks and I'll watch Tim Pool and sort of get both sides of the story. Their audiences are completely locked in with people just like them and think like them. So you like still have people this day, yelling about January 6ers killing 5 police officers that day, no, but they believe it because all their news sources repeat that same lie and they're not exposed to anybody outside of that. Or when they get they run to me and I say, oh, that's not true. The only people that died were protesters, unarmed protesters. Like, oh, you're lying. That's not true. So we have 2 different, I guess, realities.
So here's the issue I see with the Young Turks. I've known them for a very, very long time, like longer than 10 years.
Back when he was a conservative? Do you know
Not when he was a conservative. I remember, and they used to post, I guess they were, Jimmy Dore said this, I could be wrong, that they would post photos of upskirt shots or something like that. I don't know if that's true or whatever. It's been a while. Was that what it was?
That was Hassan. Hassan started out doing a lot of stuff like that.
Hassan used to do that stuff?
Hassan Piker used to be kind of like the upskirt. Not exactly. I'm not going to say he did upskirt stuff, but he was like early YouTube guy posting
edgy,
cute girls, edgy stuff. Early
bro code.
Bro code kind of guy.
Bro code. I remember.
The Young Turks have some dark stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
But what I think happened with them is they had a large audience. The cultural shift started to happen in 2015, and they did not want to go against their own audience because money was more important. So they just went along with whatever the current thing was, but eventually you break. Eventually the left starts advocating for insane things like post-birth abortion, unrestricted abortion, calling women birthing persons and have bonus hole havers. And eventually you're just like, this is insane. The problem I have with the issue I take with the Young Turks is that they're still trying to pretend to be a part of whatever the left is. Yeah, they'll say things like, well, we are on the left because we believe in universal health care. It's like, oh, so do I. And I've talked about that quite a bit on this show. And they'll say, yeah, well, we're pro-choice. I'm like, that's funny. So am I. We've had debates. Me and Seamus discuss this all the time. They're lying. They're still lying. Even though Anna is pushing back against lies from the left, they still lie and pretend that they're not in agreement with us on a lot of issues. They still pretend to support things that are completely untrue. Even when Anna says something that's correct, as soon as someone on the right compliments her or says, here's what you're right about, she'll come out and say, yeah, well, you know what, but I'm still not on the right and I disagree with you. It's like, just stop. This whole desperate need to be on the left is so annoying. That's why I'm like, I'll try and define it. What does it mean to be culture war right-wing, economically right-wing, or socially right-wing? Definitions matter. But I'll refer to this as the freedom faction or the culture war right. I don't care what you call it, so long as we understand what we're talking about.
Anyone that's like, I am a fill in the blank. I'm a conservative. I'm a liberal. I am I am an American. You are putting yourself in a box, man, and it is a dark hole. You cannot see out of that thing.
But is it a bonus hole?
Probably.
I'd be willing to bet that on most issues, I'm to the left of Hassan Piker. Hands down. I hope he hears this. I'd be willing to bet that if we actually had a discussion on issues, I would be to the left of him on a whole bunch of different issues.
I'm not.
But he would lie. No, he would lie. This is my point. I'll put it this way. If someone came to him and wanted to work on some project with him that he would finance, do you think he would actually give them the majority of the revenue generated from the project they worked on? I believe the answer would be no. I believe he'd be like, no way. No, absolutely not. Whereas here, we often discuss how if we launch a project, the people working on that project will retain the majority of the revenue generated from it. The company, we seek to foster talent and help people grow. I've publicly donated to several people in several causes. I'm not trying to start beef with him or anything like that. I'm just saying I think these people are just entertainment personalities who will claim to support a thing like Ethan Klein or whatever. They'll feign being on a political side for entertainment value. But I guarantee you, if it ever came down to seizing the wealth of Hassan Piker, he would fight you tooth and nail. He would take up arms against a communist revolution in 2 seconds to stop to stop the seizure of his multi-million-dollar mansion in California.
I don't know about that.
He's bourgeois.
I would.
He's bourgeois.
I guess, and I agree with you. I don't like talking about. I don't want to cause drama.
Let me put it this way.
Anna's awesome. She's
remember that guy in California who was cheering on the rioting and posted the photo of the burning building, and then as soon as they started marching towards Beverly Hills, he was like, "No, don't come here." That's what I'm talking about. So I'm not saying I know for sure. Maybe I'm wrong about Hassan. I don't watch a ton of his stuff, but the fact that even when I've tried, when I've agreed with him and Anna, they still act like I'm wrong. It's the weirdest thing
Was it
ever.
the way you agreed?
No.
You were it was too tonally angry when
I
you
made a
said
literal
it,
video where I was like, Hassan's totally right and everyone's wrong to criticize him. Here's why he's right. He made a video laughing at me.
Oh, where you guys were like video response, picture-in-picture video responses?
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
But like, he made a video and then I responded to it saying he was correct in his assessment. Here's why. And then he made a video saying that I was wrong about a bunch of things and then laughing at some of the points. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, I'm agreeing with you. It is fake.
Good
it's
for
fake.
money, dude. The drama is good for clicks and views and ad revenue, but we got to get to a point where we get past that. Just shuffle it off like ballast and get up into orbit.
This is why I think the Culture War Show, check it out at youtube.com/Timcast, Friday mornings, 10 a.m., is important because it's really hard for these people to pull this stuff off when they're live next to other people, which is why so many of the left refuse to come on shows live. They know in their bubble world, like you were mentioning, where their audience isn't exposed to anything else, they can say whatever they want. But when they're sitting here, everyone else can see them for who they really are. Let's jump to this next story from Deadline because we've got good news, and I'm really excited to cover this story. Jim Caviezel's anti-child trafficking thriller Sound of Freedom notches $10 million pre-sales before July 4th. And then we have this. Sound of Freedom and Indiana Jones duke it out on July 4th for the #1 spot. Check this out. Indiana Jones had 11.698 million over Sound of Freedom's 11.5 million. Sound of Freedom was only a couple $100,000 away from being the #1 film on the 4th of July. There's a lot to consider here. Indiana Jones made 83.7 million over the weekend, so most people who wanted to see the new Indiana Jones saw it over the weekend. People aren't going to watch it twice on the 4th of July. But still, the fact that an indie film is rivaling a major release only a few days later is tremendous. Y'all should go see this movie for two reasons. It's really good. I think half the theater was crying for the first 45 minutes. There's some really great story writing in there, really awesome stuff I'm not going to spoil. And the second reason is to help foster that parallel economy. Supporting indie films that are outside of Hollywood so that industry can compete and flourish and we can push back against this garbage is extremely important.
I got some questions about Sound of Freedom. You saw it. So
absolutely.
Is
amazing.
It a documentary?
No.
Okay. Does it
thriller
talk about the cobalt mines in Africa?
No.
Okay. So
it is specifically the story of Timothy Ballard, who was a U.S. law enforcement, Homeland Security, and how he quit his job to go and rescue kids who were being trafficked.
Whoa.
And it is brutal.
And Jim Caviezel plays Ballard.
You know,
you're like, man, everybody in the theater was crying, like nonstop throughout for the first 45 minutes, and then again like 10 minutes later. There's parts where you get happy because the heroes are winning. You stop crying, and then it goes back to what's going on in this world, and you just like fighting back tears.
You know what? A lot of say what you will about him. He's a guy with obviously some flaws, but Mel Gibson, this is his film.
This is his?
Isn't it?
I don't know. He's one of my favorite actors of all time. I love him. Mel, come over.
Yeah. I know he's working on a documentary about, I think it's about Ukraine and trafficking and stuff like this. But I don't know.
I'm kind of worried about wanting to going to see this and then walking out of the theater wanting to go like hunt down pedophiles or something and being like charged for that.
But that's the point of the film. And by hunt down, the correct answer is support legitimate organizations that team up with international law enforcement to bring these people down. This is what Ballard's organization does. It's you want to stop these pedos and these traffickers, and you want to get involved in that. You watch this movie, and afterwards, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, how are we not putting more money into stopping what's going on? Because it is nightmarish.
It looks like Mel Gibson is not attached to this film, as far as I can tell. Eduardo Verastegui is the producer, and we have Alejandro Monteverde as the director, written by Rod Barr and Alejandro himself, Monteverde. So I don't think Mel is attached to this one.
Do you think, like, what ages do you, for the
Angel
audience
Studios.
is wondering, which ages do you think would be appropriate to see this?
Oof, 18 and up.
Really?
I mean, what's the rating on the movie, actually?
According to Jim Caviezel, Mel Gibson did weep when he saw the movie.
Oh, bro. Like, everyone in the theater was crying.
That's what I was talking about.
Everyone in the theater was crying. I will say this. I was on the verge of tears, and, I just fought him back. But everyone around me is crying. What was the rating? I'm looking it up. I don't see what the movie was rated. Because it doesn't show anything explicit. but it's heavily implied. Like, you know what's happening. There's a scene where there's a little girl in a bed and a creepy guy walks in, and then it shows out the window and he closes the blinds. Like, you get it. A kid would understand what was going on, but an adult would. I don't think you want to bring kids to this movie.
You know, this, and it's such a universally repulsive thing that this movie attacks and go after. Like, even in prison, you know, you hear stories, the people that get it worst, that the worst criminals in the world will turn on is the people that get sent to prison for abusing children. So it's like a universal thing, at least in our culture, is that this is the lowest of the lowest of the low. And I think the point of this film is that it's not really being taken as seriously as it should.
How do you redeem?
It's PG-13.
Wow. How do you redeem the people like that, pedophiles? How do you redeem pedophiles? How do you make them no longer pedophiles?
You're not allowed to say.
It's the hardest thing. Well, obviously, I'm not talking about like.
Well, no. I'm fairly certain that they found recidivism among child abusers is like.
That's the worst part. And then it's the people that have been abused as kids grow up and then they think either it's okay because it happened to them or there's some sort of weird. So like breaking that cycle is what humanity needs to do because we can't just kill ourselves off and stop it that way. That's not effective.
You arrest them.
Well, that's one way you can slow it down.
I got to tell you, I want to say this. When I was watching this movie, I started having a whole bunch of thoughts about the moral philosophy of crime and punishment and the appropriate solutions and how you deal with these people. Because there's a lot of people that have advocated for the death penalty for traffickers, especially, and for pedophiles. You watch this movie and you'll go, I completely understand the moral position. The issue is, and I'm watching this movie. I don't want to spoil anything, but let me just tell you. There's no mustache twirling villain. There's not a guy who's like, we're taking kids. It's like the scary thing is the banality of it. The guy who grabs a little girl and throws her in a cargo box and then gets handed an envelope of cash and walks away like nothing happened. The simplicity, the horror of it. I thought to myself, what is the punishment for destroying humanity in this way? And I understand why people say that through due process, quite literally. Like, I'm not going to play any stupid games and talk bravado. Like, you arrest them and then they get sentenced to death. My fear, as always, with the death penalty is that innocent people will get caught up in it. And if 1% of the people who are charged are innocent put to death, we have a very, very, very serious problem. I side with the Founding Fathers, Blackstone's formulation. But when you see this film, it really makes it difficult. And I thought to myself, I don't think the Founding Fathers understood the massive scale of child sex trafficking and slavery that would be happening when they were like, we should be very, very concerned. Or maybe the reality is they truly understood the depravity of evil in this world and understood the importance of innocent until proven guilty and, you know, due process rights. But I got to tell you, I don't know what the solution is, but when you see these crimes being perpetrated, oh man, I just got to tell you, I understand why people advocate for amending the laws to have the death penalty for child exploitation.
You know, one place to start would be to get our government to stop perpetuating this. Because you know that in Afghanistan, this is kind of a big part of that culture. And the United States went to war against a regime that was very bad, but did outlaw this. And we allied ourselves with one that perpetuated it. And we had our own soldiers suffering PTSD because their allies would go in the next room and molest a child, and they were ordered not to do anything about it.
Rape.
And then they had to come back with that, knowing that they were protecting those people and perpetuating that government. And they still have to live with that. And God knows what the children over there have to go through.
There's a scene. Man, I really don't want to spoil this movie. Yeah. But let me just tell you, so you can understand without spoiling the film. This is about an undercover operation.
Oh, man.
What do you think a person in an I shouldn't frame it like this. He doesn't, the main character never does anything untoward. But when you're in law enforcement, like in the beginning of the movie, he's doing his job. He has to review evidence. And it's just like him crying the whole time. And I'm just like, There's a scene in the trailer, so this is not a spoiler, where a guy's like, I cannot do this job. And he like walks off. It's like, yeah, dude, who could? I'm surprised there's anybody who could stand that. But if nobody does that job, these evil people get away with it.
And may turn other people into evil people. That's the worst part about it, is it affects children when they're young, and then it can twist them early. And
dude, the writing is so good. I want to spoil the movie so bad because I want to tell you just how good it was, but I can't I gotta wait. I gotta wait.
I had a fantasy about interviewing Charles Manson before he died because I thought if we can somehow get through to the worst of the worst and let them tell their story and you see why they became that way, maybe that's like a step towards antidote.
You don't think someone like Manson actually has like is sick? Because I think that there are some people that have mental illness that are really, really sick and they need to be taken out of regular society. Not because I want them to, or because I think that they deserve to be punished or whatever, but because they're actually sick. There are medications that do help. Mm-hmm. There are people that if they don't take their medication, they do behave in ways that are unacceptable. They harm themselves. They'll harm other people. So I don't know that I agree with with the idea that you can figure out what's wrong and just love them back to health. I think there's a lot of mental illness that is really, really, really sick people that really need the medications that they're on.
And he's right, and he's right for an even bigger reason. You and him, being on the edge of tears watching that movie, the reason you're on the edge of tears, the reason it makes you upset and angry is because you have something that is called empathy. And empathy requires your ability to map somebody else's mind to sort of simulate what they are feeling and what they're experiencing. Some people do not have the capability to do that. It usually tracks with like being lower intelligence. That's why you have so many criminals. They're also not very intelligent. And the reason is that they don't have the ability to think about how another person would feel on the receiving end of their behavior. They don't know how to do unto others as you like to do unto yourself. They have no idea how to imagine how anybody else would feel. They'll punch you in the face without thinking about it because what prevents us in many ways from doing evil things is we think, gosh, if somebody did that to me, I would be horrified. That would be, and you empathize. So these people don't have the ability to do that, and it's not something you can really create.
I think there's a simple way to view a movie like this. In order for humans to survive, I'll put it in evolution terms, we protect children. Why is it that a mama grizzly is going to maul you if you get too close to her babies?
Wow.
Because of the love for her babies. Why does that love exist? Well, if we're going to simplify it in science, it's because if there is a species that does not care for its babies, it is less likely to procreate and survive and eventually will not exist. So there's a couple different evolutionary strategies. Bees just have tons of babies. Just tons and tons and tons, like bugs. That's what they do. Rabbits run really fast, have lots of babies. They do care about their young. Mammals tend to. Cats do, animals do. When humans see children being exploited, abused in these horrifying ways, the overwhelming majority of humans have a natural anger and sadness response because we want to protect children. We have to want it. It is ingrained within us. Dude, you go see this movie. The reason why I say I give it a 10 out of 10, very few movies matter. You go and watch a popcorn flick. You go and watch Spider-Man. You're like, that's fun. You go and watch any one of these, releases that have come out as of recent, and it's just like Fast and the Furious. I don't care about Fast and the Furious. I mean, it's funny. We joke about it. It's silly. Vin Diesel's driving a car, and the car is going to outer space with Ludacris or whatever, and it's meaningless. When you watch The Sound of Freedom, you're being told a story about something tremendous and meaningful that moves you in the real world. Mm-hmm. These stories you hear about exploitation based on a true story, obviously there's writing involved based on a true story, but they have real surveillance in this movie, like actual surveillance videos, not a part of the story, but they show it in like a certain kind, so you understand. Like these things actually matter. So you're watching a film that is fiction based on a true story, overwhelmingly true, but there's like obviously a lot of fiction in it. And the feelings you're getting are real emotions. Whereas like when I'm rooting for Vin Diesel to defeat the bad guy, like this is not a real fear. I don't really care if he wins or not. Once the movie's over, I'm going to leave anyway. I'm going to leave and throw my popcorn in the garbage and be like, and I'm going to forget what happened to Vin Diesel a day later. Mm-hmm. This movie, you feel something about the real world that moves you. And I'm like, that's why I think this movie is so good. Not only was it really well produced, great music, great pacing, cinematography on par with any other Hollywood flick, which is impressive for an indie film. It's like a story that makes you feel something real that actually matters. That's impressive.
It sounds like it's called The Sound of Freedom because freedom is not pleasant. It means you're aware of what's going on.
The name is related to the film. You'll understand if you watch the movie.
There's a precedence for what you're saying. This film, what you hope it to be, a couple of times. I can think of one example was a novel called Uncle Tom's Cabin, and that led to the freedom of the slaves. And whether you agree with this or not, Brokeback Mountain moved the needle on support for, call it, gay marriage. And in the same way, perhaps this film will motivate us to take this problem much more seriously and do something about it.
Jim Caviezel says that. He says that hopefully this film can be akin to Uncle Tom's Cabin and inspire people to do something about the slavery and trafficking that is currently happening around the world today. There are more slaves in the world today than ever before, even when slavery was legal.
100%.
Yep.
Well, it is legal in Africa and the Congo, and I don't see these tech companies doing much to try to stop that. So if you want to protect the slaves, you can do it in real time now. Also, the border. We need to protect the kids coming across the border.
I'll say this, like, when I heard about this movie and people were saying, like, you should go see it, in no way did I think anything about it was a conservative movie or it was a faith-based movie. I didn't hear anything about that. I went and saw it and it was good. And it's like, it's weird in the press. Admittedly, a couple of outlets have praised the film, even saying, don't call it a conservative movie. It's just a movie and it's really good. And that's it. There's a couple references to God in a very vague and nebulous way that doesn't even necessarily invoke religious connotations. It's in the trailer, so I'm not, spoiling anything. It's actually the hashtag, God's children are not for sale.
That's why they thought it was a conservative movie, probably because of that line.
But that's not even like an overtly religious thing. It's like destiny. There's a line about, when God gives you the calling, and it's like, you don't have to be Christian or religious to understand concept of fate and destiny. You know what I mean? Just because someone says the word God, like secular people can understand what it means to have fate. Yeah. So anyway, I'll say this. You're not going to get any religious stuff out of this film. If you are religious, you'll love it anyway. And if you're not, there's no deep preaching or anything in it. It's just it's like, I don't know. It's like any other law enforcement. Here's the crazy thing.
That's what it's going to be like.
I've seen these movies about like fighting the cartels before, but like the issue in the story is not something you actually care about. Like you watch a movie where it's like it's based on a true story, stopping this drug cartel. I'm like, I don't care about a drug cartel. Awesome movie. Yeah. I care that we stop drug trafficking. I care that we stop these bad guys. But like the issue of pulling over a truck with a bunch of cocaine in it does not move me. Watching a dude save a child and seeing the reaction, these actors, these kids were really, really phenomenal. Oh, wow. Seeing that, it's like someone reaches into your soul and starts squeezing and you can feel it. It's I guess I gotta say, you see that movie. But let's go to Super Chats. If you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, and head over to timcast.com, become a member. The members only show will be coming up at about 10 p.m. And we've got much, much more to talk about because there was a tragic incident that occurred these past couple of days. And we're going to save this one because it could be spicy for the members only show. All right. I'm Not Your Buddy Guy says, I am fully convinced leftism is civilizational cancer that metastasizes until the host ceases to exist. Its values are the 7 deadly sins. We're not the first and won't be the last to face this threat. I would say what we describe as leftism today, more so it's like wokeism and I guess what I'm trying to say is if we're talking about left economic philosophy, a lot of it is really, really bad, but it's not absolute. It's like yin yang. Within good there is evil, and evil there is good. I think what we should clarify is there is a cult that is an amalgam of weird leftist ideologies and economics that in many ways contradicts itself, that is just burning things down. That's how I see it.
Yes, that is important. Mao used to denigrate the rightists. He'd call them those on the right. He actually called them rightists. So this term leftist, be careful you don't become the enemy that you seek to quell by becoming the villain that's creating a lesser class. It's really about the twisting of the left-right paradigm that is the problem.
All right, Bellyflop says, I've been really liberal for trans adults, but it's gotten to the point where it's not enough to be an ally, as they say. You have to pick a gender flag. Conversion Agent Smith style, me. There's a photo going viral of a woman carrying an asexual pride flag. And she says, asexual people deserve rights and representation. We've been discriminated against. And it's just like, no, you haven't. You literally not true. There's no persecution for people who are not having sex. In fact, that was actually required of people, like a long time ago in society. It was socially unacceptable to have sex. You had to not unless you were married. So like, it's not a thing. But there's flags for everything now. Everybody wants a flag. This is very strange. Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says, Tim, I was going to wait until it dropped for home watch, but you've convinced me to see Sound of Freedom at a theater. I hope all had a great start to MAGA month and a fun Independence Day holiday, USA. Absolutely.
Yeah, same, Raymond.
I'm Not Your Buddy Guy says, I thought you were changing logos to U.S. flag. Yes, we have to do that. I need to go in and find the I have the Twitter profile picture with the American flag.
Nice.
I think on Facebook you can just do it because it saves them.
Yeah.
But on Twitter I have to actually pull up the file. And
strip you
but
of
it
the
is
blue
MAGA
check
month.
mark for a few days.
It is MAGA month.
Someone.
I wonder how that'll work considering we're an organization though.
I don't know if it will.
For your personal account.
Well, because like we're all verified through a business account.
Yeah, it's a different kind of verification, basically.
So like I could, because of our business account, I can add someone's name and they instantly get a blue check. Mm-hmm. So we should be able to just change photos.
I think you will be fine.
We will grab some more super chats. Mind of a Madman says, I actually got to load some mortars for my family's 4th celebration. It was awesome, and I still have all my fingers. You guys see that video of the backfire and then all the fireworks into the car goes off and everyone's running?
I've seen some x-rays. Oh, yeah, I have. Some hand x-rays of like 8 of them or 10 of them of what can go wrong. That's wild.
Seen in real life, it's scary.
Spencer Jones says, happy birthday, America. Met Tim Ballard a few years ago, a real-life superhero. Go see Sound of Freedom. Donate to our, O-U-R, that's Underground Railroad. It's the organization he founded to help save kids. Yeah, really cool stuff, man. Absolutely. All right, let's grab some more super chats. Uh-oh, we got some criticism for you, Matt. Kevin Brady says, is Matt going to suggest we buckle up again before nothing happens?
Yeah, great. I mean, Look Ahead has been doing a lot of work. Just because the media doesn't cover it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. We've obtained multiple convictions for voter frauds. We've gotten voters who are illegitimate removed from voter lists all over the country. We've introduced and gotten legislation passed all over the country that's helping secure the election. Check out lookaheadamerica.org. We're putting up new wins every day.
Right on. Let's see what we got with some super chats. J.R. Williams in the regular chat with a blue bean. He says, Tim has never read one of my super chats or or SS's. I don't know what that SS stands for. Well, I read that one, sir. I saw it.
SS is super sticker, I think.
Super sticker. That's what I thought. But like, you can't read that. You're like, what do you, like, do I just feel like, here is a picture of a purple puffball jumping up and down and dancing.
I wonder if we could show it on the screen.
No,
I don't know how.
Yeah, we don't know how to. We can't do that. What do we got with the old super chats? Michael TB says, you can't take cocaine or any drugs into the White House as a visitor. Trust me on this. I know for sure there are dogs in the visitor entrance.
Yeah.
No, for real. Like, I had to go through like 3 layers of security when I went there. This is insane.
Yeah, you need to like a pass background check before you go and everything.
Yeah, it's
pretty strenuous.
Christina H says, hi guys, any chance we will see Tim Ballard on the show soon? I don't know. Perhaps. We'll see. We'll see. Stay tuned. Arashi Yoshida says, didn't Obama visit the White House in the past week or so? Oh, that proves it.
Party time.
That proves it.
I saw a video of Hunter Biden. Like, he looked like he was tweaking out. I think it was at the 4th of July celebration.
Yeah.
You can see that video's only a couple seconds long.
Oh, yeah. People are pointing. He was like tweaking.
Yeah.
Raybert G. Stanbert Jr. says, Tim, I'd just like to remind you of that working theory you had that Hunter is actually the hero of the story, trying to take his father down by destroying his reputation at every turn. Yep. Hunter's actually a very sound mind, and he's like, my father is evil. I will be the man who brings him down. And then it's like his business partner, Devin Archer, whatever his name is like, don't do it. You'll ruin your name. And he's like, yes, but I'll save this country.
I'll do it. He's undercover. He's like, don't take the crack. You'll get addicted to it. He's like, I have to. I need to play the role.
It's the only way to save this country from my father. I actually think Joe Biden I think he probably abused his kids.
Man.
Yeah, or neglected them.
I think he abused them. I mean, you look at all the videos of Joe sniffing kids and stuff like that, and the fact that Hunter Biden allegedly called his dad, what did he call him, Pedo Pete or something like that?
Well, there was a journal entry.
Right. Oh, I know. Right.
From Ashley.
Inappropriate stuff. We'll just put it at that. We will grab some more super chats. RP says, Ian, I remember Roger, the boring dispatcher.
Oh my gosh.
What is that?
A friend of mine, YouTuber, 2006 and 7. He was an actual truck dispatcher, and we used to make videos and kind of hated each other at first, and then we became friends, and then I wrote a song about him called Roger, which is out there. It's on Amazon and all sorts of platforms.
All right. He says, Tim, hire me just because. We got a big super chat just came in from Verdun Hooray. I saw this, so I'm going to read it now. Listening from behind your guest characterizing bottle workers as low, intelligent, innocent victims is elitist bigotry of low expectations. These people don't need you to hold their hands.
I guess this guy's going to take some of that money he threw at you and use a little bit more of it to give them jobs and help them pay their mortgages and keep their kids in school, etc.
Perhaps. Yeah, I feel bad they lost their jobs, but it's like, if there's a dude building, a tower of evil, I'm not going to be like, oh, what a good guy. It's so unfortunate that he has no job now that we've stopped the evil from building their tower. You know what I mean?
My concern is, like, as citizens of the United States, and we've, with our tax money, have supported the overseas wars, the CIA coups, and things like that. Like, are we not part of this evil machine? And like, what if we lose our jobs? What does that mean?
Because we're all taxpayers at this table, right? Are we not part of the evil just as much as these workers in North Carolina?
By being taxpayers? There's like a big difference between being a taxpayer and like working for Bud Light.
It's different, but I have a similar feeling when I think about what I'm supporting sometimes, and like, would it be the righteous thing if that were to be stripped away from me as one of just the feeble workers of the system?
There's certainly one thing I find very laughable is this idea that people are insulated from being a part of any one of these machines. Like, yeah, we pay taxes to the United States, which does a whole bunch of really awful and evil things. And the reality is, if we wanted to, we could go and live in the wilderness. And people often say, like, well, you can't because everyone owns something. It's like, dude, trust me, if you wanted to, you can go live in the wilderness. Like, nobody's going to find you.
Yeah, you can do it.
Like, yeah, there's a lot of no man's land.
Yeah.
Do you really want to do it? Most people don't want to do it. And they won't. And so they end up paying taxes and being part of a machine that does really, really awful things. But I look at the United States and paying taxes to it not as like supporting abject evil. I think the U.S. does bad things, but I think the U.S. is overwhelmingly good. We just have to fight from within to fix it. We have the means to do so. The people who work at Bud Light, less so. I mean, I'm sure the bottle plant workers who are subcontract could complain, but Bud Light clearly doesn't care and has no interest. The people in this country can ballot harvest, ballot chase, vote, and actually get Donald Trump elected again. And then he can start making those changes. We have seen tremendous changes made throughout the United States. So it's not absolute. There's absolutely problems in this country that we are a part of and we help support. But my point is, somebody built Mordor. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to be upset that they've lost their jobs because Mordor collapsed when the ring fell into the fires of Mount Doom.
All those workers on the Death Star.
Yeah, seriously.
Like a meme on the internet.
Yeah.
What about all the
and
families?
And it is, like, to be honest, like, that's different. Luke Skywalker, like, straight up killed millions of people. Like
True.
Left with the kids, fatherless. Think about it.
Seriously, like, how many? The Death Star was a planet base. It was like a moon, and Luke Skywalker blew it up, and there were people there, and they were like that's from Clerks. To talk about like the janitors and like the contractors.
The contractor, though, the thing is, when you work on the Death Star, you're working on a Death Star. Or you're some guy that, you knocked your girl up out of high school. You decide to marry her, do the right thing, try to start a family. You take a job paying, a little bit above minimum wage, and you're just filling bottles. And the next thing you know, some CEO who's never going to feel any pain at all from it does something dumb, and suddenly you're out of. I have sympathy. I just have tremendous sympathy.
The people who work on the Death Star don't think they're working on the Death Star.
If you know you're working on the Death Star.
So you're saying that when someone gets hired by a contractor to build a building for the government, they know they're evil.
There's a difference between putting on a uniform, taking a weapon, or going into a war zone and fixing a tank in a war zone. I think the
Death Star was a military base in outer space that wasn't in enemy territory or anything like that. And a guy gets hired to build like microwave panels for one of the rooms.
With a empire that is at war, and you the
United
point of
States
Clerks
is an empire.
Well, the point is the Clerks is that you have to accept responsibility for where you go to work. And my standard for people being a technical contractor going onto the Death Star that has a giant weapon that's going to blow up planets.
Or did they?
Is a little.
Maybe it was kept.
I think they saw that.
I bet the Empire told them it was called Happyville. It was the Death Star name is only the rebels that gave it that.
Well, but yeah, it's propaganda, man.
But the Clerks.
They probably called it like the USS Liberty or something.
But the Clerks example was the second part is that a contractor knows a guy is a mobster and turns down a job to fix roofing on his house because he knows he's a mobster. Whereas he could have just been greedy and said, "Yeah, he's going to pay me twice what I normally get. I'll go." He said, "No, I'm not going to do it." And that was the guy who overheard the conversation interrupts saying, actually those people who take the job on the Death Star, they should accept some responsibility. But I'm sorry, I just can't see working on the Death Star and working in a bottle plant for
Manhattan Project. People did not know what they were building. Nobody knew. That's the famous story of how it was compartmentalized and there were theories about what it could or couldn't be, but no one really knew for sure.
Once you get to the Death Star and you look around and see the uniforms that people are wearing, you're not screaming, "These are the bad guys."
You know your military, that's for sure.
The Empire, the people, the average citizen in the Empire still thought that they were living under the good guys,
the Republic.
Yeah, because the in the beginning of Star Wars, of Episode 4, like they say, we just dissolved the Senate, the Imperials, the last vestiges of the old Republic have gone away. So people didn't really know that it was the bad guys. They were cheering for the end of the Republic and the
Death Star already existed.
Yeah,
but are you not saying that the name Death Star didn't kind of give it away a little bit?
I don't imagine that the average person on. I don't think the average person on. I don't think the people on Coruscant called it the Death Star.
Yeah, like the people working on it, it's like we're building a space station for the Empire.
Preserver, it was called.
And they probably called it the Republic still existed when they were building it, and they probably had the Republic has commissioned a orbital space station.
And I'm installing a laser on it that can blow up an entire
No, you're not
planet.
installing a laser on it.
Who installed the laser?
You're saying one guy built the nuclear bomb. One guy was like, I'm going to build this all by myself.
Look, you know if you're building a laser.
Maybe some of them.
The people who worked on the Manhattan Project did not know what they're building.
Some of them didn't.
The highest, like you actually had people like, was it Oppenheimer who said, "I am become death"?
Yeah. Yep.
Some of these people knew exactly what they were doing and said it, but the average person working on the project had no idea. So I'm saying this. Look,
are we now defending the contractors on the Death Star?
All about the work.
Absolutely. Defending them in this sense.
Well, how can you defending them and not the bottle plant workers?
No. Just let me finish.
Okay.
I did defend the bottle plant workers. I am sad that they lost their jobs. I don't blame them for what Bud Light did, but I'm not going to cry that they're no longer propping up the banality of evil. The people working at the Death Star who were killed by Luke Skywalker in this terror campaign to blow up a military base.
Religious fundamentalists, crazy.
Religious fundamentalists on a terror campaign, blowing up a military base, call it whatever you want. There were people who did not know what was going on. And like you said, like some people take responsibility for the things they choose to do. If you don't know that you are providing a major component to a weapon of mass destruction, I'm not going to be like, well, you're absolved. Like
over 2.5 million citizens of the Republic were on that space station, and they all lost their lives. Wow. How can you say that that's okay?
How many contractors or civilians? But how many civilians who weren't working there? Like, what about people's families? Yeah. You know what I mean? But anyway, I digress on the Star Wars point because it is a bit silly. The point is, throughout history, there have been tyrannical regimes. And there have been soldiers who marched along with those tyrannical regimes doing jobs that we would describe as mundane, filing paperwork or mopping floors. But these people still get held accountable for being a part of these regimes.
That's true, but the people who mostly suffer from these regimes are the people at the very bottom with no say, no agency at all, who get grinded up in the gears of history and are forgotten and are turned to dust.
But that's immaterial to, yes, absolutely. The idea that I mean, look, there are wars where the kings or leaders of countries lose and then say, well, actually, I'll give you an example from The Patriot, Mel Gibson. Love this movie. When Mel Gibson starts taking out the officers of the British forces, he actually has a meeting with the guy and he's like, we want the cessation of, the killing of officers. And he goes, no, so long as your officers are ordering the targeting of women and children, I will order my men to fire on them on sight. The Cornwallis was like, you can't target the officers. Like, we're special people. And he was like, too bad. Like, it has always been the case that the nobles will go to war and then be like, well, you've bested me. Shall we have a pint? Yeah. People, but look.
We're not shooting the officers in this case, though. We're shooting, the people who are, way behind the lines, maybe working supplies or something like that.
It's like, imagine it's the Civil War. And there's a bunch of Southern Confederates conscripted into the war and they're marching on Gettysburg. And you're like, no, don't fire on them. They don't know what they're doing. Let them keep doing their thing. Like, bro, they are the war.
Yeah, but if you just shoot the generals and a couple officers, they'll go home, back to their farms.
But that's not possible because they're shielded.
Not in this case.
So the issue is the people at these bottling plants are the ones who make Bud Light the money and are the ones responsible for all of it. I don't blame them as individuals, but I am not going to cry that they lost their jobs. We want... When we said, I hope Bud Light goes out of business, did people not realize that meant they would lose their jobs?
I just wanted the executives who made the decisions to be fired and never employed again.
That's ridiculous, though.
But that's
never going to happen.
But otherwise, it's like you use the term collateral damage. Well, look.
The last person to be fired is going to be the people who are at the top.
I hear you.
When the company is a smoldering pile of economic, figurative rubble, then they'll only be fired because there's no more money left, not because anybody fired them. Who fires the boss? The board? The board and the CEO are going to protect each other, depending. I really doubt they're going to go after him. And it's the people who build the machine. This idea that it's like the machine is made by the individual laborers who all come together in this big swarm to make Bud Light possible. So when we said that we hoped Bud Light would go out of business or be knocked down, quite literally we're saying thousands will lose their jobs.
That's pretty rough. But I hear where you're coming from. I just have a point of disagreement with it.
Yeah, the job economy thing is kind of like they use it as an excuse to propel crappy.
My position is
just the whole thing that everyone has to have a job is like,
there is no circumstance where our boycott would lead to higher ups at Bud Light losing their jobs. Sure. A couple.
Didn't the people who made the decision lose their jobs?
A couple of marketing VPs.
But the person who actually made the decision,
Alyssa Heinershed, she's the one that actually made the decision.
So
right.
Like one person lost their job and the company doubled down.
But it was one person's decision ultimately.
So why is Bud Light still sponsoring all these Pride events?
I guess they need some more pressure and more
all
change
they
on the
did
board.
was do a PR stunt and ignored the problem. But now the machine is actually crumbling, and that means when the machine crumbles, people who work on the machine lose their jobs.
Yeah.
There's no circumstance where the higher ups of the company take responsibility for this and anything actually. I mean, look at the DeSantis campaign. His supporters defend him when he does things that are bad. He won't fire his press team. It doesn't happen. We want there to be accountability, but the idea that like it's just not the real world. The real world is that Bud Light is made by individuals to the tens of thousands. The only way Bud Light stops getting made is if those individuals stop working to make Bud Light. You can fire the CEO, they'll hire a new one. You can fire that Alyssa Heinershed or whatever her name is, and they still keep sponsoring Pride.
But if these people had quit their job, they just would have been replaced. And honestly, these jobs are less than 10 years away from complete automation anyway.
You're right, they would be replaced, except if you get the plant to shut down completely, which happened.
Well, they'll find another plant. Capital will find it.
No. They're not finding another plant. The plant's shut down because no one's buying the beer and the bottles aren't going anywhere.
Where was the plant? Do you guys know?
Louisiana. The point is this. They didn't shut the plants down because of cost. They shut it down because nobody is buying the beer. You can't make product people won't buy.
Right, but your position is like, if you're a worker at this plant, you should have been paying attention to social media and caught way ahead of the outrage.
Yes.
Hey, they're about to release a can with a transgender
Not about
person.
to. You had 3 months notice afterwards when the boycott started to start looking for work elsewhere.
It's kind of like people that didn't know to get their money out of the stock market before the Great Depression. Like, I have compassion for those people, but they lost their money.
Well, almost no one did.
Because they didn't know. Some people, some people knew. Some people got out, put cash in their backyard. Some people bought hard assets, you know.
I do not accept the argument that people are not responsible for their own lives. I remember when I was a little kid, I was late to school one day because a train came. And when I got to school, they marked me late. And I had to tell my parents and get a form signed. And my dad said, "Why are you late?" And I said, "Well, it wasn't my fault. There was a train." And he said, "You know the train tracks are there. That's your fault. You should have left early to not get stopped by the train."
How old were you?
13.
Would they have held you to that account if you were 5 or 6?
Walking by myself. You're talking about 40
or 7?
and 40-year-old men.
But what I'm getting at is there's an age at which, or there's certain, look.
Yeah, the guys working at the bottom line are not 4 years old.
Yeah, but the bottom line is that we're every American, every person here, I think, believes in justice. And when somebody makes a bad decision, that they're the people that ultimately need to be held accountable for it. Whereas people who had they get home at the end of the day, they spend a little time with their kids, their wife, they have a nice, maybe one beer and a nice dinner, and they're not paying attention.
I'm glad they lost their jobs.
All right, well,
the idea that you could ignore your civic responsibilities and not know what you're building is absurd to me.
There was one can that was issued as a promotion, and it blew up.
That is incorrect.
I was
Dylan Mulvaney sponsored a contest, drinking several beers, and put out it was not. See, this is the lie the media put out. It was one promotional can. No, Dylan Mulvaney made a video with a bunch of beers, and it said support this contest or something like that, and drank the beers. And Dylan Mulvaney said that they were hired by Bud Light, and then Bud Light basically abandoned them. So if the issue is Bud Light decided to do this thing, and it caused a backlash, and Bud Light refuses to apologize, doubles down on sponsoring more of these events over and over again where nude men are dancing and thrusting in front of children, which they did, and it keeps happening. And you are working at a plant that makes Bud Light, and you're like, well, I don't care. I'm getting paid. I'm glad you got fired. Every person has a civic responsibility. This is the frustrating thing to me. Going to West Virginia, 86% supporting Trump, and the people there don't pay attention, don't vote, don't organize. They do nothing. To a certain extent, I don't blame people for not wanting to jump into this political conflict, but we need to recognize that individuals have responsibility to their country, to their families, to their communities, and it is being abandoned too often by the right, but the left revels in their cult-like behavior. That's why they had gained so much ground. So for Bud Light to do this, and for people to be like, well, it's been 2 months, Bud Light's doubling down, people are mad, sales are dropping. Every week we can see, I'm going to keep working here. Sorry.
I just don't think these people had any awareness, and it's unreasonable to
That's why it's their fault.
I hear you. Look, you are technically right. If you work for a company and they're doing things that could cause you to lose your job, you should say, yeah, there's a problem here. I'm smart enough to recognize I need to kind of get it, or I have the options to, but a lot of these people, so look, I have a jobs program at Look Ahead America for people who have gotten out of prison for J6 because they've got 2 strikes against them. They've committed a crime they've convicted, but they also have the burden of being a J6er, right? Which makes it even harder to employ them. And we promote, we try to find employers to place with them, and we try to find people that can that have suffered from this who need help with employment. And we do that at lookaheadamerica.org/jobs4J6. So if you lost your job at this plant in North Carolina, we're going to open up this program for you to do our best to help you find a new job. And if you're an employer in North Carolina, please sign up to help us. I'm
going to read one more super chat. It's a good one. And then we're going to go to the members show at timcast.com. Phalanx says the Empire didn't call it the Death Star. It was called Project Stardust, according to Rogue One.
Yeah, oh, nice.
So we're going to go to the members only show. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Head over to timcast.com, become a member. That's where the members show will be in a few minutes. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Matt, do you want to shout anything out?
I do. Look, mostly, Tom, sometimes I agree with people largely, and they say something I disagree with and just let it go. But sometimes they say something that's very dangerous. And recently, Mike Lindell has done this. And he initially did it in a conversation with, I consider a good friend, a great patriot, Scott Pressler. Scott Pressler is advocating that we need an all of the above strategy for voter turnout, that we need to encourage people to vote early, especially those who are not inclined already to show up and vote on Election Day. And we see this happening again and again. And it's important that these people have their voices heard, and it's affecting the outcome of elections. Whereas Mike Lindell, maybe best of intentions, but he's saying that, no, we can't do that. And he says, these people are 100% wrong. He's quoted in the New York Times saying that we should only have same-day voting, shouldn't encourage people to do anything else. Mike, I put my head on your pillow every night to sleep, but you're wrong about this, and I am challenging you to a debate. You name the time and the place. I think maybe we can do it here or on one of the other affiliated shows here at the Timcast world, but I think you're wrong about this, and I think we need to have a public discussion about that between you and me, and I welcome you anytime, any place to discuss the importance of this issue because it's going to have a big impact. And anytime, Mike, let's do it.
We should have you guys on the Culture War.
I'd be happy to do it.
Mike Lindell, come on down to the Culture War podcast. We'll get you guys and we'll talk about voting. That'd be really fun. Would love to do it. We'll see if we can make that happen. That'd be cool.
I think it'd be fun. I'm Phil Labonte, lead singer of All That Remains. The band is All That Remains. On Instagram, it's All That Remains. On YouTube, it's All That Remains Music. Spotify, Pandora, all that stuff.
And he is Matt Braynard on Twitter. Matt Braynard. Thanks for coming, man. What's the name of your organization again? Particularly the jobs website.
Look Ahead America, and the website is lookaheadamerica.org, and it's Look Ahead America. lookaheadamerica.org/jobs4J6.
Is it the number 4 or jobs4J6 spelled out?
Good question. FOR.
Thanks.
Jobs4J6. And if you're a J6er and you're having a hard time finding employment because you got all these strikes, we do have employers that are willing to give you a shot. So we've hooked up many people with employment, and let us help you.
Thanks for coming, man. Great to see you again. Also, special shout out to Conservative Dad's Ultra Right Beer. I had, I think, 6 of them over the weekend, although it was a long weekend. It might have been 4 or 5. It was a lot, and it was very good. I don't normally drink, but when I do, lately I've been drinking Ultra Right. Conservative Dad's Ultra Right beer. We have it stocked in the fridge downstairs. And also, I want to say goodbye. Have a nice evening. See you later.
That was a good one. Thanks, guys. My name is Serge.com. And remember, guys, it's not about how hard you get hit. It's about how hard you get hit and continue to stand up and keep going. So, like you said, it's. I feel bad for people losing their jobs, but, people lose jobs. That's life. You have to get a new job. It's on you. It's your responsibility. So I hope they can find work. Follow me on the internet. I made a Threads thing because, I don't know, it's not going to win. It'll be dud in a little while, but @Serge.com.
Oh, Threads is out?
It came out today, so I made a stupid post saying, are y'all ready for this or something, just because I wanted to make a joke.
Well, let's go to the members only show. So head over to timcast.com. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see y'all in a few minutes.